Netflix has been hit with 4 felony indictments over the film Cuties because that film depicts children, prepubescent girls, in lewd adult activities. And the strange thing is, and I suppose it's not strange to most of us, but one thing that's happening is that the establishment left and many left activists have been and are still outright defending this film as if it should exist because they say it's a critique. The strange thing is you can critique something without actually doing it. Imagine someone doing drugs and saying, don't look at me, I'm just critiquing heroin. That doesn't quite make sense. But where it gets interesting is that these felony indictments come from a grand jury, meaning a district attorney showed the film to people and asked them if they thought it was a crime. And these people said yes. And now Netflix is facing 4 felony indictments. So I think that's interesting as to what the media tells us versus what regular people think. So we're going to talk about that. We got obviously a bunch of stories about what's going on in Ukraine, but sometimes the war talk is just, we get it, there's a war and it's all everyone's talking about. But we will. The View earlier today, I think it was earlier today, called for the arrest of Tulsi Gabbard and Tucker Carlson for pushing Russian propaganda. That's how insane everything's gotten. So we'll be talking about all of that. And we have 2 guests joining us today. First, we have Kellie-Jay. Do you want to introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Kellie-Jay. I am a women's rights campaigner from the UK.
Right on. Is there anything people would have known you from, or anything you focus on specifically?
Yeah, I focus on the word woman specifically to keep it for women. I got a billboard taken down in the UK in 2018 that had the dictionary definition of the word woman.
Which
and
is?
It was removed for an adult human female. Who knew? And it got removed. It got removed for hate speech.
What?
Yeah.
All right. Okay. Well, so we have a lot to talk about. Interestingly, we have a couple stories out of Ukraine where one story is about a trans woman who is not allowed to leave because a trans woman is male and men aren't allowed to leave the country. I know YouTube's going to hate the language, but I'm just trying to describe it. And the other story is a trans man who put on feminine clothing to be able to escape the country. So it's an interesting, so we'll get into all that stuff. And then obviously it'll lead us into a lot of what's happening with Ukraine. But we also have Libby Emmons hanging out.
Hey, glad to be here. I'm Libby Emmons. I'm the editor-in-chief of the Post Millennial. Glad to be back, everybody.
Right on.
What's up, everybody? Ian Crosland over here from IanCrosland.net. I'm actually working on my Brave browser right now and setting up my Brave search engine. If you haven't done that yet, you can flip over away from Google or DuckDuckGo and set up your Brave search engine. It's in beta.
I actually use that all the time. I use Brave.
Yes.
Do you use the browser and the search engine?
Yeah.
Good.
Perfect. And I am also here in the corner pushing buttons. I'm wearing one of Kelly's shirts. I don't know if you guys can see it. It has the dictionary definition of the word woman, which is highly unpolitically correct. So I'm looking forward to wearing it in public and seeing what happens.
When did daylight savings time happen? Was that yesterday?
Sunday.
Yeah.
Sunday. I'm wondering if there's a lot of people in the chat who missed that.
I think it was last Sunday.
No, it was yesterday.
It was yesterday?
Yeah, it was yesterday.
No, it
Yeah.
was
So
not.
people
Even
think
ahead of time.
people
Yeah,
think
yeah.
that it's 7 o'clock still.
Someone was like, why are they starting early?
We're so early.
And I'm like, it looks like some people, yeah.
This is
it
the
was
dawn
yesterday.
of time.
Yeah, it was yesterday.
Everyone's like, are they early?
Yeah,
Men have
not
been
early.
confused.
All right.
By daylight savings, yes, true.
Changing.
I think it's so dumb. Just
It's
wake up an
silly.
hour early, I guess.
Yeah.
But whatever. It's brighter out and it's 8 for whatever.
Yeah, it's great.
All right. Before we get started, everybody, head over to surfinginternetsafe.com. You can pick up Virtual Shield, the virtual private network, to help keep your data safe. Right now, I think more than ever, it's obvious why we need it with the January 6th committee. Just going to these phone companies and being like, give us the private records of these people. And the phone companies are like, you got it. This is why you want a VPN. It's not a perfect shield, but it is a basic layer of protection that will help keep your data safe. You'll get 50% off a lifetime discount at surfinginternetsafe.com. They say Virtual Shield lets you browse the web completely anonymously. So the big name ISPs, internet service providers, and other third parties will not be able to monitor and sell your internet activity and browsing history. When using their VPN service, your traffic is routed through secure and encrypted servers. That means that any restrictions, censorship, and blocks on your internet are bypassed. You can enjoy browsing a fast, reliable, and secure and always available network. It is free for 30 days, available on Mac, Windows, iPhone, iPad, Android, Chrome. Virtual Shield does all the work for you. Your entire connection becomes secure, private, and encrypted. Virtual Shield routes your internet through advanced encrypted servers across the globe to prevent your ISP from being able to track your internet traffic. Personal, family, and business plans are available. Family plan includes 15 devices. Business plan allows you to add as many employees as you need. Virtual Shield completely encrypts your Wi-Fi connection, blocking hackers and everyone else from accessing any of your data. So again, surfing internet safe. Special thanks to Virtual Shield for the support. They were our first sponsor going back, I think now 6 or 7 years. So rock on Virtual Shield. We love you. Don't forget to go to timcast.com, become a member, and support our work directly. You'll be keeping all of our journalists gainfully employed, and they're eternally grateful for it. And also, you'll get access to members-only podcasts from this show. We're going to have a members-only version of the show up at 11 or so p.m. I imagine there's a lot of topics that are really sensitive that we're not going to be able to talk about, but there's going to be I think, we'll just put it mildly, tonight's members-only show might get very... It would piss off the censors. I'll put it mildly. So check out timcast.com. But let's talk about this first story about Netflix. This one I find to be absolutely fascinating. Netflix takes on Texas. Attorneys analyze the outlandish fight over Cuties. The Hollywood Reporter is basically, they're talking about a story in which this month there was supposed to be a hearing in Texas. Netflix is facing was to face a criminal charge for, I think it was like child lewd behavior or something. There was a federal ruling that overturned the statute from Texas about children in lewd activities or lewd behavior. So the DA, who, strangely enough, as the story goes, played the character Spider in the film School of Rock. His name is Lucas Babin. Brought the film Cuties to a grand jury and asked them if it depicted children in adult films, to put it mildly. And a grand jury returned 4 felony indictments. So now what's happening is we're seeing with this Hollywood Reporter story, they're bringing in these lawyers who are like, oh, it's a First Amendment thing. You know, they're obviously critiquing the sexualization of children. And we're now in this strange world where when a DA brings the film before a bunch of regular people and says, was a crime committed? They say yes. Yet the establishment media, the left as you would call it, is defending a film in which they took 4 young girls. I don't care if you think they're actors or actresses or whatever, actually taught these little girls to do these dance moves, had them do it in an extended scene that was like 3 minutes long, have scenes where there's clearly adults grooming these children, and then said, but it's a critique, it's fine. This is the you know, if I can broaden the conversation a little bit outside of this, clearly we live in completely different realities with whatever the establishment and the left is, from regular people to...
I'm kind of thinking of George Carlin's obscenity, push against obscenity. I understand. I'm, you know, morally, I felt like that movie was a little too sexualized. I think you made the example earlier. It's like, in order to explain something, you don't have to like show it necessarily. Like something really vile, you don't want to like put it in front of people to prove that you're doing it.
You know, when Shakespeare wrote plays, all the violence happened off stage. You don't need to see it to know what happened.
It's a great point.
Yeah.
I mean, those little girls actually doing those scenes in front of a whole, I would imagine, mostly adult male crew, is just gross. I mean, what were the parents or anyone thinking?
Well, so I think there's one part of this story that easily proves they know they're doing something wrong. In the Hollywood Reporter, they say, conservative circles have rallied behind criticism of the movie for sexualizing and exploiting children. Babin's father, Texas Congressman Brian Babin, U.S. Senator Ted Cruz, and a group of more than 30 House Republicans have called on the DOJ to prosecute Netflix. This and other calls by conservatives to investigate the making of the movie prompted Netflix to apologize for inappropriately sexualizing actresses in marketing materials. The marketing materials were clips from the movie.
Yeah, they were pretty nasty. The issue is that it's not a critique because they actually did it. They actually did these things with little girls. As Kellie-Jay was saying, you know, in front of an audience of crew. They paid them for it. You know, they paid the children to do these things. There was a lot of incentive to do a good job, and please the people who were asking them to do it.
I brought up Carlin because he, in order to show the obscene thing that he wanted to make more publicly agreeable, he would just do it. He would say it. He would say the words that were horrendous at the time. And this is kind of like, so the metaphor is like the child sexuality is the dirty words of the 70s.
No.
It would be different if it was an animation. It would be different
like
if
Big
it
Mouth.
was... Yeah,
Which is also disgusting and weird.
It would be different if it was adults playing children, right?
There's a line
that
you
would be
can't
different.
cross.
Or
But
they
it's
could
not.
just like, the kids could have come out on the stage and then it could have showed the people's faces and then not actually put these little girls in that situation.
Carlin got arrested for saying the words, but he did it anyway. He was like, I'm just going to...
Yeah, but he was saying words. He wasn't
And he's an adult.
depicting the abuse of children, which is different.
Right.
And even if you say things, like if he had said out loud what was being done, what these girls were doing and being made to do. If you say it out loud, that's also different than actually doing it. So it's what makes it, I think, more similar to like a pornographic situation is that just like in adult films, the acts are actually performed.
What would be crazy is if it was about child murder and the movie was all about showing kids getting killed, there wouldn't be any emotional backlash like there is about child sex. It's different.
Would the children actually be killed?
No, it would be all be acting. Just like this is all acting.
No.
But it's not
You see,
acting once
right.
you're doing the actual thing.
Right. So like,
I mean, even if you're acting like you're doing the thing, you're actually still doing the thing.
It's their real
you know,
bodies.
it's and it's like if that was a snuff film, if you're talking about a snuff film, there would be a lot of backlash of that.
well, I mean,
And this
I
one
wouldn't call
would
it
hope.
backlash. I would say like pitchforks and
And it would
arrests
be,
and
you know,
DOJ
it would be
investigations.
illegal. It would
Yes.
definitely
Right.
be
I
illegal
guess
to do like.
I didn't
I
see.
think this-
Did you guys see Cuties? I haven't seen it.
You know,
I wouldn't watch it. I didn't watch it.
I've
Seen some of the bits.
yeah.
I saw a couple clips.
So the issue for me was I watched enough of it to where I said I'm not interested in watching this film, and yeah, I'll put it that way. I did not watch the film as if to say like I sat through the whole thing, but I watched the relevant bits to a certain degree and was just like, this needs to be turned off. It's disturbing.
Dude, they got a kid that looks like Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. That the main 12-year-old actor looks like a sexualized Cortez. It's insane. Talk about
Sure,
clown
but
world.
that's like a French film.
Yeah,
or
what a
whatever,
weird
so I'm not
coincidence.
sure.
Yeah, so
It
Cuties is
probably
the
is.
reason that I canceled my Netflix subscription. I was like, this is unacceptable. Sorry, I'm just not having it. I don't feel like giving money to a company that thinks that this is tolerable. It's not.
Here's
I was more angry when they pulled Star Trek, the original series. Off.
Imagine it this way, Ian. Imagine they made let's make a film critiquing children doing drugs, and we'll literally give kids crack and film it, and then be like
a reality
we're
show.
critiquing it.
Yeah.
That's the issue. So
It's more like that, I think,
It would be
than
more-
what Carlin was.
But
doing.
was it a reality? I didn't see the movie. Was it a reality show? It wasn't. It was fake.
No, it was
all
fake. But I mean, look
wait,
at
what do you mean?
Like the movie wasn't. They didn't actually go into a club and get 12-year-olds dancing. They
No,
They had to
hired
audition,
actors.
and they probably had to sign a contract, and their parents had to agree to this grooming
But it was
behavior.
sexual. It was so they had to, whatever they were doing, acting or not, it was a sexualized performance. So it doesn't really matter whether they were acting; they were still actually doing it with their real bodies.
So the funny thing is, the response from a lot of these people on the left is that the final scene in question, where the little like 11-year-old girls or whatever are doing the sex dancing, is that the audience is disgusted by it, and I'm like, but you all literally watched it too, and they actually had these little girls do that. So what? Show someone being grossed out by it, and all of a sudden you're allowed to do it? That doesn't make sense to me. If you're criticizing it, you wouldn't do it, right?
Also, when we have like TV shows or stuff like that in the U.S., usually adults do it. Like 90210, which is the first thing I could think of. All those actors were in their 20s,
Right.
And they were like having sex and doing whatever. They weren't actually having sex, but they had like all the make-out scenes and stuff. But everyone was in their 20s. The same with like, Riverdale or any of those
Euphoria.
shows.
What
They're
ab-
all in their 20s.
What about Superbad? I brought this up when I was talking about this earlier today. Christopher Mintz-Plasse, I think, was like 16 when they filmed the movie, and there's a scene where he's having sex with some woman or whatever, and apparently his parents had to be there and sign off on it. I'm wondering, this is a 16-year-old. We know high school kids are doing things, but does that make it better at all? Because I'm actually wondering.
I'm wondering,
Yeah,
As you're saying that, I'm wondering about that as well.
I mean,
I still thought it was messed up.
realistically,
Yeah.
a 16-year-old boy and an 11-year-old girl are worlds of different when it comes to
Yeah,
sexuality.
That's true too.
Well, right.
One
It's-
is going, has gone through puberty and is still doing it, and the other
Still
one
feels
is,
exploitative though.
yeah.
Yeah.
Filming a 16-year-old boy.
That's certainly not.
Pretending to
I would
have
never
sex.
sign off on that for my kid.
If I had been
he
that
was
16-year-old boy,
16.
I would have launched at that opportunity.
Well,
though.
Well, sure.
But so here's the
Would your
interesting
parents
thing.
have gone for it?
yeah, they supported whatever my
Really?
choices.
My
they
parents
trusted.
did not do that.
I honestly feel like this, along with what the whole Florida controversy over "Don't Say Gay," it really does feel like
It's not in the bill.
right. It's not, but their perception of it or what their critique is. You look at Superbad. There's a scene where a 16-year-old kid is hooking up. It's in the movie, and it's not like graphic or anything, but it's clearly a scene acted out by this kid, and they want you to be like, they're 16-year-olds, we know high school kids are doing stuff. Then you end up with shows like Big Mouth, which is like 12. What is the show, like 12 and 13-year-olds?
Yeah.
That show's messed up. It's a
11,
cartoon
13,
though. It's a
yeah.
cartoon. Everyone's like, oh, but it's Nick Kroll. It's like famous actors pretending to be kids, and it's just cartoons. And I'm like, it's still weird. Do you guys know the show Big Mouth?
I don't know it.
You've got to
No.
watch.
Really? Should I write
It's
this
worth.
down?
Yeah. It's the most overly sexualized cartoon I've ever seen.
Of children.
Oh.
Yeah, I'm not.
Oh God! And you're saying I have to watch it?
Yeah, it's like
gruesome.
you might get sick to your stomach. And then he's got like a little sex demon on his shoulder that tells him to
No,
have
it's not
sex.
little. It's a massive.
It's just crazy.
It's like 6 feet tall.
Yeah, I won't watch it. I
I
tried.
think
I
sex
couldn't.
demons would be large.
Yeah.
They'd
Well,
be like, I am
larger than life.
overbearing.
Yeah.
They're-
I'm taking over.
Netflix got criticized. Critiqued is probably the wrong word for it, because there's an episode where it shows 2 little girls walking around naked, and it shows a whole bunch of naked women. And they said, no, we're trying to tell little girls to be okay with their bodies. That's why we're showing it. And people said, look, dude, it's a cartoon. There were no actual children here. Then what happens? You end up with movies like Cuties, where it's like, now you have actual little girls doing it, but
Right.
oh, come on. It's a critique, just like, and I'm just like, yo, why don't you guys like stop?
Yeah.
Well, it's interesting too because this stuff is coming up in books too that are now available in schools. There's this whole controversy with this book, Gender Queer, by a person called Maya Koabe, I think. I don't know how to say her name exactly right, but this book has been talked about by parents all over the U.S. That this book has child pornography in it, and that it has like depictions of all these crazy things. So I bought the book because I had been writing about it, and I was like, I should really take a look at this book myself. And it is rather disturbing, not just for the reasons that the moms that I know were complaining about it, but also for this journey of this young girl who comes to decide that she's not a girl at all, that she has like these other pronouns that are like, they start with E's.
EM ear.
Yeah, that's it, EM ear. And so the book eventually is the story of this person who grows up to be a comic book artist who's 25, has never had sex, has no interest in sex, is binding their breasts, and is teaching middle school and planning to come out to the middle schoolers as an asexual AEM heir. And this is all like very affirmed, and it's all very, couched in this language of hyper positivity. The main character in this book hates their body, is terrified of going to the gynecologist, which if you're a woman, like you got to show up at the gynecologist at a certain point, at least a bunch of times in your life, to make sure that you're not dying from a whole bunch of reproductive issues that can kill you. So, this person is terrified of that, terrified of being touched, all of this stuff. And it's in the language of joy and spectacularness.
Look, I can, understand adults who want to live however they want to live. Someone's over 18 and they decide they want to, juggle oranges all day or like dress up like a giant duck. I'm going to be like, literally don't care what you do, man. You can go mind your own business. But it's the obsession with children that I find, disconcerting.
Me too. Yeah, like why do you need your middle school teacher to come out to you and tell you that they hate their body and
it's all over TikTok, right? That
all of this
people
stuff.
actually do come out to really small children in this fashion, but there is an overwhelming surge to break the frontier and boundaries of kids, just totally erode all safeguarding, not allow them to use words that are literal and mean something, and the sexualization of kids, whether it's Cuties, whether it's this cartoon, but it's like it's as if you're doing something remarkable if you're trying to enforce this onto kids. It's so messed up.
It's almost like we've destroyed our culture to the point where there's no way for children to gauge when they're adults. So we just have to decide that they're adults from the very beginning and can understand this stuff. So kids are learning about gender identity before they know what sex is.
Why? I don't think it needs to be asked, but to the left, my question is to the left in general, why they think there's an age of consent. Now, the issue is, I honestly think the left is opposed to that idea of an age of consent. I think many of these people are just ignoring that issue for now. But I think if you were to actually get these people in private and ask them, they'd probably advocate for really, really messed up stuff.
I think that's correct. And I think we've seen that. Right?
I think what they're doing is they're eroding our culture with, things like Cuties and defending it. And I'm like, could you imagine this film being made 15, 20 years ago?
Well, 15, 20 years ago, or 20 years ago anyway, like Tipper Gore would be pissed, right? And she was the second lady or whatever, the vice president's wife, who put the explicit advisory lyrics on, my Jane's Addiction album.
We see all those things on Twitter. Have you ever seen like MAPS, the minor attracted person stuff? And
Or this foundation, Prostasia, the Prostasia Foundation, which is all about advocating for pedophiles to be accepted in society.
You have to wonder about what these people's true goals are at the end. And then, you have to wonder about why people like Epstein kind of just disappear.
Trafficked.
Why Ghislaine Maxwell gets convicted, but convicted of what? What did she do? I mean, we're talking about a crime that involves two people, right? Where are her clients? Why they all get away with it? And then it's really funny how it's just like anybody who brings that stuff up is clearly a conspiracy theorist, and they must be making things up. And I'm just like, dude, the Netflix thing is really, really fascinating because I don't think they're going to be able to walk away from this one. A grand jury. So apparently the feds are like, we're gonna have a hearing on this in June or something, or July, over whether or not this stands. But I have a feeling that the DA is going to say to the federal judge, we completely agree with their critique. Yeah. And agree, you shouldn't sexualize kids. Okay, but they did.
It's such a shame, though, don't you think, with Netflix, because they really stood up for Dave Chappelle. They are willing to sort of allow supposedly controversial opinions. And I really was, I totally back them for that. I think that's brilliant. And then they do this, and you're like, oh, come on, please.
I don't know if they actually back Dave Chappelle to a certain extent. The last special that Dave did was heavily focused on trans people. It's like it's really weird.
Yeah.
Dave did a special. He mentioned he had jokes about trans people. He got attacked heavily for it, and it seemed like it consumed him. And so he ends up,
right?
His next special ends up being this kind of like, it was very defensive.
Yeah.
It was nearly a TED talk, to be fair.
Yeah, no, seriously.
Yeah.
Where he was like, and he was like, I guess people just don't understand the joke, so I'm going to stop doing them. Well, it's like they got him.
What did you think of that? What did you think of the whole Chappelle thing?
Well, I have issues anyway, because I think he's incredible for walking away from all that money and keeping his dignity and credibility all those years ago. But I'm not really a great big fan of his humour. The way that he talked about Candace Owens, I just can't really get past that. But yeah, I think it's bizarre that comedians, Ricky Gervais is the same, they sort of tell a joke and then explain the joke. And when have you started doing that?
Right.
Just tell a joke.
Weird.
If it's funny, we'll laugh. And if it's not, we'll move on. But you saying, oh, this is a joke because actually I'm doing a bit of wordplay and I'm doing this and please don't cancel me. It's like, no, just have the bravery. Just tell a joke.
Indeed, yes.
A story that is a great overlap is this story from Newsweek about J.K. Rowling and YouTuber Vosh sparring over International Women's Day, mainly because one of the critiques against Vosh, one of the most common ones, is about his comments on young children and sexualization of them.
Yes.
And so he is an interesting character in this, in that he kind of embodies a lot of these critiques we're talking about.
Yeah.
So this story is, you may have seen it, it's actually from 5 days ago. J.K. Rowling called Vosh likened him to an abusive ex-husband who used to tell me my life would be great if only I'd comply, but you're making the same mistake he did. Women like me can't be bullied out of resistance. There's a couple things I find interesting here that's worth talking about. One, I don't know if you saw this, but recently, what's her name? Emma Watson? Is that her name, right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, she said, I'm here for all the witches. And then everyone clapped. I don't know what that's supposed to mean, but a lot of people are assuming she was making like a trans affirming statement or something.
She looked gutless when she said it, so I think she was.
All the witches? Is that what she said?
She
It was
said,
like all the witches.
Oh my gosh.
like, what does that mean?
I'm here for all the ladies, I think.
I don't know.
But J.K. Rowling's an interesting subject in this, and interestingly, Vosh is as well, because we're talking about the weird grooming of children and stuff like that. Vosh has been heavily criticized for that. J.K. Rowling, is an interesting story. For those that aren't familiar, I mean, this is the gist of the story. She said, someone please send the Shadow Minister for Equalities a dictionary and a backbone. Happy International Women's Day. And then Vosh said, women be quieter and start apologizing challenge. To which she responded with that, you're like an abusive ex-husband. He said, listen, Joanne, you don't get to play the victim card when you're the advocate for taking away women's rights here. Trans women are raped and killed in men's facilities, and you want to keep them there because of your trauma. Quit making your feelings other people's oppression. Ugh. For this, my attitude is like, and I said this before, this is not to be cute or hyperbolic or facetious. I believe that Vosh is a men's rights activist.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah. Saying women shut up, or, women be quiet and start apologizing. Like a language like that 10 years ago, they'd call them an MRA.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And even socialists were called MRAs. So this is like, this story and the issues around J.K. Rowling and everything that's going on, man, I really just want to reiterate the point. There are two different realities. We know it. It includes war, it includes law, it includes politics, it includes culture. And this is where the two realities just clash all the time.
Well, it's sort of fascinating, right? Because we have set up an alternate reality as a culture. We have social media and the online realm, which is an alternate reality. Do you guys remember Second Life, where you could live in a virtual realm? And now you have Meta, which is like, Second Life Part 2 or whatever, where you can live in a virtual realm. So as we are creating this alternative reality that we all engage in every day, and if you're in media, you engage in it constantly, like I'm always on Twitter or whatever. And then there's real life. And when you talk to people in real life, they know fully that men and women are different and that biological sex is innate. And then when you talk to people online, they don't know that. So it's like this battle of which realm of reality is going to, which dimension is going to win the war of what's true.
Yeah.
And what's interesting is when you have concepts of transgender ideology, which also is backed by, concepts of transhumanism, which is the intentional evolution of humanity with the help of technology, right? So you have Zoltan Istvan, who's a transhumanist who ran for president a few years ago. He didn't have a chance, obviously, but there he was out there. We are grappling with this. We are grappling with the question of what is real, what is truth, what is reality. And, I wonder what is going to happen. It's fascinating to watch it. And as our culture moves further into the realm of transhumanism, where we, believe that our bodies and minds are two different entities that are at certain times apparently at war with one another, in the realm of transgender ideology anyway, your body and mind are sort of at war. What is going to happen? It's a fascinating situation and also terrifying.
Have y'all seen the film Surrogates?
No.
It's a interesting movie. Bruce Willis. It's a future where people have these like pods they lay in, and they plug in, and their consciousness is transferred to a surrogate body, a robot version of themselves. And so you see like Bruce Willis is looking all like perfect, his hair is to the side or whatever. It's like combed, and he can run super fast and jump super high because it's a robot body. Then he wakes up old and disheveled and wrinkled in his apartment. No one goes outside anymore because it's dangerous. You got to send your surrogate out in your stead. In the opening, there's a guy and a woman come out of a club and they're hooking up. And then someone is able to kill them through their surrogate. So it's like a big deal. When the police go to the woman's apartment, they're like, ma'am, are you here? And they find a 400-pound morbidly obese man, sitting like in his chair, whatever, having died or whatever. And so I think that's an interesting concept. They did that. There's something with when people are given the choice to project themselves as whatever they want, like they can on the internet, as either a cartoon animal or identityless, anonymous.
Right.
They just choose what they wish they were.
Right.
And I wonder if one thing that drives identity crisis in people is living too much on the internet as opposed to living in your body. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I think we don't live in our bodies as much as we used to, for sure. You can even tell with like so many of our trends are about trying to make your body okay. You've been sitting for too long.
Right. Yeah.
Maybe you should exercise.
Yeah.
You've been ordering in for too long. People have been bringing you food for too long. Eat this protein.
But so I'm wondering if, you look at the metaverse. I don't know if you've seen the videos or like Mark Zuckerberg.
They are terrifying.
What the heck?
But they look like Mii's, like from the Nintendo Switch or whatever.
Yeah.
Cool,
They don't, or like from the Wii, I guess. But they don't look like humans. I'm wondering if people will start identifying as that. And then
Right.
because that's what you see as a person, that's who you interact with. I'm wondering if a lot of what we're seeing, because the identity crisis stuff isn't just trans, it's
sort of
otherkin.
everybody. Yeah.
Are you familiar with otherkin, Kelly?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
That's
people
like
who
the
think they're
puppies.
like, they think they're dragons.
Yeah.
Or there's that
owls.
whole like refuge in Colorado of a bunch of people who think they're cats.
Ah, what?
And they go
What?
there for like cat people orgies and things.
Oh my
I'm not
gosh.
kidding.
That sounds horrifying.
Yeah, but yeah, I think we're
Hey,
having.
but-
I think all of this stuff. I think it's a transhumanist culture war. I think that's
Yes.
what we have
Hopeful.
going
I'm
on.
hopeful. I'm hopeful. I think real human connection is actually a really powerful thing. And whilst we may trend away from it and people may shy away from it somewhat, I don't think we can escape it. I think no, I can't live in a world in which we are heading towards not touching each other and
But we're already there. Like
Yeah, I know.
And you mentioned
the
surrogates, like,
20-year-olds are having less sex than ever
Yeah, it's
before.
true.
More like A for asexual is part of the LGBTQ alphabet soup,
Yeah.
right? It's all in there. Asexual is a sexual
Wow.
identity. There's less sex, less people want to have kids. There's less touching. There's less
Do
dating.
you not think that we will get to a point though where this unpersonal chaos will just reach peak, and then we will just revert back to, maybe if there's a
maybe
massive
they-
war.
right?
Maybe-
Yeah,
maybe.
maybe if there's like a reason for all of us to run screaming into the woods.
but it has to do
There
with
have been so many.
the internet and video games and
Oh,
things
yeah.
like that. If we keep living in digital spaces, then it'll only get worse.
Could be that our species is splitting. I was watching like Evolution of Humanity documentary last night. You see the branches of trees, and then like the Homo erectus, and then you've got the hominids that come out of that, and like they appeared. You'll have like Neanderthals and Homo sapiens came together, but we were different. So like now we've got another race of like computer zealots that are like agenderless computer hominids, and then we've got everyone else that's still Homo sapien.
So you're saying the next stage in human evolution is bodiless conscious entities that exist in digital spaces?
Maybe, but the problem with that is all through history, when a species splits, they go to war with each other, and like one of the branches will end up becoming dominant. So
Like X-Men.
we might see that. And if they have like brain neural plants and they can move machines with their minds, that's going to be hard to defeat in a war. So
Well, but why? Yeah. That's interesting too, with like Neuralink and stuff.
Like Terminator.
Well, sort of, but imagine, look, it's not going to be, if you were going to break it down towards who is most likely to get Neuralink, it's going to be city, urban, liberal types.
Sure.
Not going to be conservatives.
And that is a transhumanist thing, the
Right.
Neuralink.
And
for
so what
sure.
happens then when, the people who live in cities are Neuralinked, so they have direct access to the summation of human knowledge, for better or for worse, and then you're going and competing against somebody who doesn't. Like in certain areas, they're going to end up being better than you at certain tasks and certain
There's also
things.
sort of I was talking to a friend of mine about this who has cerebral palsy, right? And so there's a lot of things that he can't do. And I was slamming all this stuff, Neuralink, and the idea that there would be these surrogates, because we had talked about that, like that you could go out as somebody else and he was like, that all would be awesome for me because I can't do shit, and he was very like, if that were happening now, I would go move my random weird arm with my Neuralink that I can't move now.
And it'll be communism.
Right.
You know why?
Why?
If you took every single human body and put them in pods and then plugged them into the matrix, their limitations would be defined mathematically by the code, not by their physical bodies, which is somewhat randomized. So you could be 6'5", 200 pounds of, 280 pounds of pure muscle in your pod. In the digital world, you are a weak.
I was thinking that last night. I
Identical
was
to everybody
at my
else.
computer and I
That's
blew my
interesting.
nose and threw the tissue away. I'm thinking like all this stuff I just did. I picked up the thing and I blew my nose and I took a sip and threw it. Like that was all in a computer. If I was in a computer simulation, I couldn't be able to do the variety of calculations that I can do in this reality. There's this like limitless potential of actions that you can take in base reality. And like exactly what you were just saying, in the metaverse, you're bound by the code. You can't go chop down the thing and take a sip of because it isn't real. It's just it's the illusion of the system.
I mean, depending on how complex the system is.
Yeah.
But when you're playing in video games online, your character, like if you're playing like World of Warcraft, for instance, online video game, you can be stronger than another character, but everyone is given an equal starting point and everyone's given a relatively equal ending point, though some items are rare and harder to get. You got to work harder. For the most part, if all, in the real world, some people are better than others.
Extremely limiting. The video games are extremely limiting. I imagine having children is like the most adventurous thing you could ever do. Like if you want to have a mind adventure, I would imagine that that's interacting and creating a human, and then being in a relationship where you can like change your body at will in ways you didn't understand that it could be changed. Like
maybe the easiest way to break down what's happening is not authoritarian versus libertarian. It's not multicultural democracy and constitutional republic. It's literally transhumanist versus what's the word for someone who's not a transhumanist?
A human.
Luddites.
Yeah.
They'll call them Luddites, but
Right.
that's the negative connotation.
What's the other word? Like troglodytes?
Humanisms.
Yeah.
No, they would call
humanists.
them like
Humanist
troglodyte.
versus
base human or something.
Yeah.
You know,
cishuman.
are you human plus? You're gonna go to a bank and they're like, and are you human plus or are you base human? I'm humin plus.
Would you like the
plug in your
premium plan?
The premium plan. Plug in your Neuralink and we'll give you the $50 gift card. Like,
So is it like Homo cyberneticist?
I think
is
that
what's
will
up there?
happen. I think
I
that
do.
stuff will happen.
Yep.
Yeah, because we'll all just have little RFID chips in our hands. Can
It's going to
open-
get brain hacked, and those people
Right.
are all going to be tracked and in like a hive mind.
yeah,
Right?
but they're gonna like it, dude.
But they want it.
They won't know they're in it.
They want it.
Yeah.
As
They
soon
want
as
to chop off their legs and have like special
They'll be
jumpy
like,
legs.
I have total
and
control. What are you talking
frog
about?
legs and
Shutting down. Yeah, it'll be nuts.
Yeah.
Have you
I've-
seen Black Mirror?
a couple
yeah,
episodes? Yeah.
There's a really good one about all this sort of crazy, just load yourself up, or every time you walk past someone, they sort of rate you.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Well, because they can scan, like, if you have an RFID chip now, it can be scanned. And, like, people can get the information off your chip.
And then someone's going to hack it and be like, they'll have a real low rating, but they'll make it look like they have a 4.8
Right.
out of
It'll
5.
be like changing your
It'll be
report card.
scandalous,
Mom
yeah.
will never
The-
know that I failed chemistry now.
think about what's happening. Think about what happened with all the vaccine mandates. Now think about what would happen if everyone's hooked up to a two-way computer connection to your own brain. The government's going to say, for everyone's good, you need to install this antivirus software in your Neuralink, and everyone's going
Right.
to go, okay, and it's going to literally start sending information into your brain.
Right.
Like
So
that.
dangerous.
And then
There'll
it's
be.
going to download. You're not even going to know it's downloading.
It'll be like
It's going to
man.
corrupt
this
all
person
of the
needs to
Thoughts
die.
will be
Right?
downloaded.
Well, but that is what Elon Musk's Neuralink is all about. That's part
Right.
of it. It's so that you can, it's like I'm such a dork. It's like the Binars on Star Trek. They have like their whole, but it's like
Yes.
once everyone is linked by these neural links, there'll be a lot more information that people will have, but there also will be no individuality, no independence, no liberty, no freedom.
Wrong analogy.
You don't think it's the Binars?
No,
They
it's the
have
Borg.
Oh, well, there's that too.
Yeah.
The Binars, I guess, were like the innocent version.
It'll be
Right.
like the Borg, but they're going to
because they did have their world computer. That's how it starts.
Yeah.
They're going to think they're individual. The Borg at least knew they are part of the collective. These people are going to think they're individuals, but they're going to be being controlled. Well,
Borg
kind
had a
of is
queen-
what's happening now with TV and commercials and stuff. We're being manipulated without realizing it.
Well, yeah, there was a recent ad. There was a recent Adidas ad that was all about. It was like women in sports, except it was all about trans women in sports.
Really?
And yeah,
Did it show any females?
it did show some, but like trans women was like a big part of it.
I want to
push.
We're gonna do like we have this interesting segue from this conversation into Ukraine, surprisingly, but I guess in this day and age, we have the story from Business Insider, how a transgender Ukrainian man escaped Russia's invasion. I painted my nails violet and wore mom's shirt to look more girly. We then have this story from TMZ. Transgender woman, I'm fighting 2 wars in Ukraine, fears Russians and transphobic Ukrainians. So this is interesting because in the story about the trans woman in Ukraine, because of the war, they announced if you were 16 to 60-year-old man, you could not leave the country.
Right.
Legally in Ukraine, a trans woman is a man. Whatever your political opinion is on it, that's the view of the Ukrainian government. I do think it's funny that the left is just like totally on board with Ukraine. I get it. The Russian invasion is a bad thing, but you got like Nazis there and it's like the government is transphobic, but whatever. So you have this story where this trans woman is like, I'm a woman and I can't leave because of this rule. Then you have this other story about a trans man. So this person is born female, paints their nails and wears feminine clothing to be able to escape the country. To me, it's interesting. I'm wondering, there have been a lot of males who fled Ukraine as well as well as women and
Just
children.
like the Titanic.
Right. I mean, and I understand if someone's like, I don't want to fight in a war and they want to get out, but this is like your country is being invaded. The interesting thing to me is I understand these are two unique individuals, and we're not talking about a group here, but it is fascinating. The two stories we got out of here are about a biological male and female, a trans man and a trans woman, both trying to flee the country and not stay and fight for it.
Yeah, I mean, the headline's interesting, isn't it? Fighting two wars. Actually, they're trying to not fight any.
Right. Right, exactly. Not the gender war, not any of it.
We talked about Lia Thomas, I think is how it's pronounced. This is the biological male trans woman who's competing against females in college swimming.
At UPenn, yeah.
Yeah, at UPenn. But there's also a trans man, so someone born female who got top surgery and competes against
Isaac Hennig.
Isaac Hennig.
At Yale.
So my issue is it's I mean, obviously the Ukraine thing is a situation of war, life and death.
Yeah.
So I'm like, hey, anybody who wants to get out and is worried, we should help these people. When it comes to the college swimming thing, my question to the left, which they have no answer for and they just insult me, is, okay, so if you're saying that a trans woman is a woman and then should be allowed to compete in the women's division because the women's division is a social construct division, right? You say, yes. Okay. Well, Isaac is a man identifying as a trans man. Therefore, they shouldn't be allowed. And they say, but Isaac's not taking testosterone.
Right,
said,
that's the excuse.
So we're talking about biology or society? Pick
They
one.
don't know.
Well, whatever suits
Right.
the argument.
Well, it all flows in one direction. Like whether it's a trans man or a trans woman, they're both trying to find a way to leave the country. The trans woman says, but I'm a woman. You can't say I'm a man. The trans man says, I'm going to paint my nails and wear women's clothing to
What
try
I
and
don't
get out of the
understand is
country.
why is the person who is female but trans as a man, why do they have to do anything? Like, if they're a female, why wouldn't they just walk over the border?
So the interesting
I mean, if
well,
because
the
the
nail
thing
polish
is,
is magic.
if you're a female, right, you can have short hair and you can. I know this is crazy, but you can wear a suit. You could wear button-down shirts. You could wear men's shoes if you're a female, and it doesn't change anything about being female.
I even heard that
you
women
can even
can
keep
be
your
gay.
fingernails super short
Yeah.
and unpainted,
I
and
don't-
you still are female.
No, but I think one of the big issues in the culture war is that, whatever our faction is, we assume too much about the other side's beliefs and understandings of things. I think it's fair to say that they don't think that a woman can have short hair or do these things.
Well, no.
If a young girl says, I want short hair and I want to wear blue jeans, they ask the child if the child is trans.
Right.
They don't
Now
say,
they do.
yeah, they don't say, well, maybe you just like short hair. It's become like, if you act, this is the strange thing to me about it. Maybe I should understand that if you have a child who says, a little boy says, I like dolls, then all of a sudden you have conversations about whether the child's trans when the child doesn't have an understanding of sexuality because they're prepubescent.
Right, and they just like stuff.
Right.
And you
Yeah.
don't even know why they like stuff. Like, maybe they like dolls because they like the color or the texture, or being able to tell stories with dolls.
Stick it in their trucks. I don't know.
Sure, stick it in their trucks, whatever it is.
Right.
But we don't ask children what it is that they like.
Yeah, sometimes the joints of the doll are what make the doll cool.
Yeah, they're
doesn't have to
kinda
do
cool.
with like if it has blonde hair or is a girl.
I
or
had
a
one
boy.
where you press the button on the back and she winked at you.
Oh, wow.
It was Western Barbie.
Matt Walsh brought this up after the Dr. Phil thing he did. He said if a little boy or his son came to him and said that he thought he was a girl, he said we'd ask him why. And often you'll hear him say things like, I want to play with dolls. And he was like, but boys can play with dolls too.
Sure.
It's funny because hearing Matt talk about stuff like that, that's like that used to be progressive.
That was the original, that was like much the feminist perspective, right? If you're a woman, you can dress and behave however you want. You can dress the way men stereotypically dress. You can behave the way men stereotypically behave. You can do any of that, right? You can sleep around. You can do whatever. It's fine. And now we've switched all that up. We have taken the gender stereotypes and embedded them further.
Yeah, and it seems like the modern progressive left's worldview is that there are social behaviors intrinsic to sex. Isn't
So
it?
bizarre.
Yeah,
It's so bizarre.
I'm just confused. But I gotta be I don't understand.
There was a case discussed on the BBC, and a little boy lived with his mum, and she had 2 towels after she had a shower for her hair and her body. And one day he said, I'd like 2 towels. And she said, you don't need 2 towels. So he said, but I'm a girl. And so she went to bed that night and thought deeply about him being a girl. Not that he just wanted 2 damn towels. And then he started on his road to transition at like 7, socially transition.
That is messed up.
It's just so weird.
My son uses like 4 towels. I don't know what he uses them for. I come into the bathroom.
Well,
I'm like, you really needed all these towels?
Apparently.
Why did she say he didn't need 2 towels though? He has hair, right?
I have no idea. This is her very brave journey about discovering that her son was really a girl. And so I
But
think
the
she thought that
question
was a good
is-
thing to say.
I think the question is, what about this child saying that they were a girl is like confirmation of a trans identity? I mean, obviously,
For her,
right. So like, what makes you think from saying I want 2 towels to saying that you're a girl makes the leap to their biology is wrong and they need medication or some kind of surgical treatment, right? I mean, I'm assuming that she went to the doctor though, right?
for me, if we assume she hasn't got something like Munchausen's by proxy, there is a lot of social status for average people to gain by doing this brave and super wonderful mother. And it is women, unfortunately, it's women that go along with this narrative with their kids. It's not so much dads.
Well, it's
Yeah,
sort
yeah,
of
like
a
in
feminist
Texas.
fascism.
Yeah.
So
Where we have taken the ideas of feminism and we now impose them by force.
I don't think words. I think this is probably intentional, but words have almost no meaning at this point.
That's correct.
What does feminism even
That was
mean?
intentional. We were actually, before we went on tonight, Kelly and I were looking at the definition of gender and gender identity on Wexlaw, I think at Cornell, and they're the same. They basically have the same definition.
Which word? Gender and gender.
Gender and gender identity are all about like your perceived self and your innate internal self.
Yeah.
Which isn't anything. Like, it's just absurd. We've taken and we gaze in so deeply that we think we see something, and it's not.
I just try to
It's just
avoid
not
all
there.
of that social argument stuff by just saying sex.
Well, that works out.
So I'll say like male and female instead of men and women, and then I'm just like, there you go, fine, whatever.
It still doesn't work with Canadian hate speech laws.
Really?
But we're in this really bizarre sort of idea that our bodies are not connected to who we are. I mean, I am my body. If I was taller, I'm sure I'd be slightly different. If I was a lot shorter, I mean, I don't know if that's possible, but if I was loads shorter, I'd be a completely different person. Of course, if I was a man walking around in the world with A, testosterone, and B, being a man and being treated like a man, there's a transaction between me and the society in which I live, and we both kind of find out what and who I am. It's not just up to me, and it's not just up to them. And it's bizarre that we're deciding that gender is separate from that your internal sense of self is a social construct, is the most stupid idea, and it doesn't make any sense.
I was just thinking about someone in prison, maybe because people are adaptable and their sense of what I am, like in prison, they're like, what do you even think I am? What are you? Who are you? And then they beat the hell. And like when people are getting like sexually assaulted in prison and like over and over and over and over again by some big guy, and it's a guy and he's like, I'm not gay, but I have to create a new reality for who I am in this situation. And so they create like a new gender almost to exist within that without being insane. So I understand that that's happening to people. I think it's honestly, if you zoom out, I think it's happening because like there's so many people on earth misproportioned in cities and all these phenolphthalates in the water and pharmaceuticals like making people androgynous and making people kind of
Isn't
like
that
shaving
like a
off.
conspiracy theory?
I don't know. It just seems logical.
Isn't that true though? That birth control is in public drinking water.
Yeah,
Yeah, I've heard that
pharmaceuticals go into the toilet
true,
in the
though?
pee when people pee them out after they eat the Prozac, and then that gets in the water supply. People are all really, really messed up, and it might just be a process of the human race kind of shedding its skin.
Look at that. Yeah, it's a.
That's a fact. Yep.
So we got the story from Insider. Birth control pills
That
could
is
add 10 million
creepy.
doses of hormones to our wastewater every day.
Frogs.
Some of that estrogen may wind up in our taps.
Yep.
Yeah, this is a story I heard about a while back. Hormones from birth control pills can travel through showers, toilets, and washing machines to local wastewater facilities. In his book, Troubled Water, activist Seth Siegel writes that birth control pills add more than 10 million doses of synthetic estrogen to U.S. wastewater every day. From there, the hormones could get discharged into rivers and lakes that serve as sources of drinking water. Only a tiny portion of the estrogen in wastewater makes its way to U.S. taps, but Siegel still thinks we should remove it. So I think maybe it's a bit exaggerated, as if you're like turning the tap water on and there's going to be birth control in it. It looks like it could be an issue.
We all also, aren't we having a fertility crisis?
We are.
What is that
Yeah.
all about?
Like we just aren't having enough kids.
Does it mean that people aren't trying enough, or that it's people
there's a
aren't getting...
lot of trying and there's a lot of not having children.
Is
like
that because they're late? Too late?
what? There's
Older?
that. There's like being older, and then there's being older is one of the things, but there's also been issues of fertility. Like
There's so
I don't
much
have enough
junk
information.
in the food supply.
Yeah.
High fructose corn syrup, aspartame. We have birth control. You have how many oxycodone? How many of these pharmaceuticals that are legal are getting pissed into the water supply?
it's kind of crazy.
What are your guys' thoughts on birth control?
I have lots of thoughts on birth control. You want to hear them?
Yes.
So I went on birth control when I was 16. My doctor said that I had polycystic ovarian syndrome and that I should go on birth control to regulate my cycle. So I did. I did go on birth control. And then I was on it for a very long time. I was on it until I was 33, something like that. And then I went off it because I wanted to have a child. And I had, for that whole period of time, I thought I was depressed. I thought I was maladjusted. I thought I was awkward. I thought I was socially weird. I thought all of these things about myself, that I was morose, miserable. And then I went off birth control and it literally felt like a dam broke in my entire body and in my brain also, where it was like suddenly I could see everything in color. And I just felt like an entirely different person. And I suddenly really was more outgoing. I liked being around people more. I wasn't really depressed. I mean, I was still miserable because I'm still me, but I wasn't depressed about everything. It was shocking. It was so shocking that I had to go back on it within a month, and I had to wait a little bit to go off it.
Slowly come off.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, there's
And then it turned out that I didn't have polycystic ovarian syndrome. I
Jesus.
wasn't infertile.
gosh.
There was no reason for me to be on the pill that entire time. And I had suffered from for a while I was on this pill where if I went into the sun, I would pass out.
Jesus Christ.
Right. And I was in LA. I was like, this is not working.
There's two.
I do not recommend birth control.
There's two big issues. One is the feminist view that birth control has empowered women because now they're free to function, without fear of pregnancy, which could potentially hold them back or whatever. But then there's also the fact that our society has mass medicated young women.
That's correct.
And I'm wondering, have we tracked for the psychological impacts of mass medicating young women?
Well, I've gone through, I've done a little study of other, essentially upper middle class girls in my age group. All of us were put on birth control when we were about 16. Every one of us. And I was like, did you have a reason? Well, my doctor said my periods were weird. And the reason that they say stuff, they give you a reason, is so that your insurance covers it.
Right.
So my insurance covered it for the
So
entire time.
The
I wonder if
doctor
it's
just
different.
wanted you on it, or
Yeah, the doctors want 16-year-old upper middle class girls in the U.S. on birth control so that they don't have teen pregnancies.
huh? I mean, I guess teen
That's
pregnancy is a bad
basically-
thing, but
That's yes. It. Now I sound crazy, but in looking at all of the women I know of that age, it's very this this has
So
happened to all of
Birth
us.
control makes it harder to have kids, and they're peeing it into the water supply, and it's harder for people to have kids. Gung gung. What?
Have you heard of the mice utopia
Oh,
experiment?
Talk about it all the time.
yes.
It's just, when they give mice a lovely place to live and enough bedding and enough food and enough everything, and eventually the mice go a bit crazy and turn on each other and stop having sex. And
Oh, that's like America.
Well,
you just wonder if you.
we do talk about the Utopia experiment quite a bit. I think he did it. The guy did it with mice and rats, like he did one and the other, and a finite amount of space, but unlimited food and water, and then the rat, just to see what they do, and they would have what's called behavioral sync, where the rat society would break down and they would start eating each other and killing each other. I was thinking about that because we're effectively running a chicken utopia experiment, and I'm half kidding, but we launched a YouTube show called Chicken City, which is just live streaming the chickens, where they have a large amount of space, unlimited food and water, and we have no intention of harvesting the chickens. I'm wondering if we'll see something break down, or if chickens will just not be they're different different species. I wonder if it's different from, mammals, the birds.
Do they have
or
a
whatever.
limited space?
They do. Yeah. It's big though. It's a
pretty
big
big.
space.
Right.
But the rats and the mice had limited space, but it was a decent amount. What was interesting is that in those experiments, they would all cluster in one bunch in one area and not utilize the full space they were given. So, yeah.
I just wonder if we lack purpose. I just look at, if my kids ever talk about millionaires, sort of Kardashian style millionaires, and I'm like, yeah, but
Are they
what
billionaires? They're billionaires, right?
Well, billionaires, millionaires, billionaires, just a lot more than me. But I'd sort of look at them and I think, what's the purpose of their day? Like, what are they striving for? And do we as human beings need something to strive for? Because if you've got nothing to aim for, to go for, to move forward for, then don't you just stay still and then just become unhappy?
Yes. So I had a friend who became a millionaire when he was like 16. And he said that he had an existential crisis.
Right.
Because all of a sudden, it's not just the fact that he was rich and could buy anything he wanted. It was that all of a sudden he was like the lord of everyone.
Right.
The way people treated him. He no longer had like teachers who would tell him he was wrong. All of a
Right.
sudden it was like, hey, let me get that for you. Oh, you're so smart. Wow, look what you've done. And he said that, it happens to all of these guys in tech who become millionaires rather quickly because they like write a code, write a program, and then overnight it sells, and then now they're worth $3 million. And they're sitting at this massive bank account thinking, what do I do now? Like, you wrote the code, you wrote the program, you solved the problem, and now you're rich. But they never did this work because they were trying to get money. They were trying to accomplish something, and they become listless, depressed. They sleep all day. He told me that eventually most of them, they'll go like 6 months to a year, and then finally normalize, and then their happiness stabilizes, and they try and find their next mission or whatever. But I think that hearing that story, and then think about the fact that I think most people in the United States today are living like kings, may be why we're dealing with this collapse, this behavioral sink. I definitely think the U.S. is dealing with behavioral sink, much like the rat utopia. I think, I've seen it with like Occupy Wall Street. All of these people protesting, this is, now almost 11 years ago or 10 years ago. When I was in Brazil, and many who listen to this show probably have heard me tell the story, but forgive me because I haven't told it to Kelly. When I went to Brazil, I was in the favelas, and I met, the favelas are shanty towns. They fall apart in the rain. And one of the woman asked me in Portuguese a question, and it was translated, why are the rich people protesting in the United States? And I said...
That's a very good question.
But I said, I don't understand. They're not. And then she asked, and he was like, oh, she's asking about like Occupy Wall Street. And I was like, oh, those were like college kids with debt, people living in cities. And she laughed. She was like, the Americans are all rich. Her question was like, I think it was probably like mistranslated. She wasn't saying, why are specifically the American rich people protesting? She was saying something like, why would Americans who are rich protest about this stuff? And it's really interesting because I'm like, hey, you're preaching to the choir, man. I'm like, if you got air conditioning and a refrigerator, you're living better than Rockefeller did 100 years ago. So we're all basically taken care of. What do we do with our lives? Create problems? Complain about stuff?
I sometimes think you get to the top of Maslow's hierarchy of needs and then it inverts.
Yeah.
And then we're just heading for... just doomed.
So Kim Kardashian came under a lot of fire that I didn't think she deserved because recently she said something along the lines of, you need to work hard. And everyone's like, oh, you're rich. You don't know what it's like. But she keeps herself busy. Didn't she go to law school? Like, she didn't just like
She didn't go to law school, but she has been reading law.
Right,
doing
yeah.
this other different way to get a law degree.
She has a company, right? And she's doing all this different stuff. I completely agree. Like, you should be staying busy no matter how much money you make. And especially if you get richer.
It's like the Matrix, In the first Matrix, Agent Smith tells Morpheus, he's like, the first world we designed was perfect, but the human mind rejected it because it craves conflict and struggle. It's like, without it, people become almost deranged.
Well, also, we have a lack of... So I'm what you call a gold star atheist. I've never believed in God. But I think the organized religion and the mutual purpose of people and collective purpose of heading towards an afterlife, of actually trying to do good for something that you can never touch. I think that also has left us wanting. And I think where we've looked is within our narcissistic little bodies.
Yeah, I think that's
nice.
right. We have turned in and we worship the self where we used to worship God. And now we do worship the self. And we have removed the soul. We've extricated the soul and replaced it with gender.
It's so beautiful.
I do think it's interesting that the culture war has made a lot of people like theist or whatever.
I've got a theology degree, so I have a vested interest in.
You're an atheist with a
promoting-
theology degree?
Yeah.
I mean,
thought-
I
that's,
love this.
That sounds right.
I want to
Does that
hear
make you
everything
a
more about this.
theologist? Yeah, tell me about it.
A theologist.
That's wonderful.
No, I think that makes sense if you're going to be an atheist to know what you're talking about.
Well, I thought I'd find some. So, for a start, I thought university, because I'm an idiot, was going to be like Kids from Fame, which is probably way too old a reference for any of you.
I liked it. I liked the show.
So you just sit in an individual chair and you'd all sort of discuss these really meaty topics. It wasn't quite like that, but I just thought there may be universal truths. And if I study theology, I may find universal truths, and then I may examine my own belief system, but that didn't actually happen. However, I do think the universal truth of human beings absolutely needing something above and beyond themselves is something that now we're finding out to our peril.
Yeah.
Do you think above and beyond, like a partner?
I think anything that makes you put yourself a little bit last. Whether that be family, community, whilst we've lost our organized religions, in the UK probably more than in the US, and it's no mistake that in poor countries they still are very religious. So whilst we've lost our religions, we've also lost our sort of touch your parents because they're just next door kind of culture. We don't have communities. We've all moved away from each other. Many people live tens of miles, if not hundreds or thousands of miles away from their parents. And I just think these real things that you can reach out and touch are things that we desperately need.
Doesn't it feel almost like it's intentional? I mean, think about it. The idea that you turn 18, move away from your parents, separate from your family, go off to college. You go to college, what happens? You get a bunch of strangers indoctrinating you in these institutionalized learning facilities. It just seems like a lot of things that have happened over the past 60, 70 years have effectively orchestrated the downfall of the family and our society. I'm not saying it is
that's
intentional.
really interesting.
I'm saying it's just
Yeah.
like you've got people who heavily advocate for separating yourself from your community, from your family. I just think that's interesting.
When I was looking at college and stuff, my mom wanted me to go to college very far away. We lived in Philadelphia. I had only lived with my mom for 2 years. I didn't know her that well. I didn't really grow up with her. And she was like, you should go to California. You should go somewhere far away for college. And I was like, I'll go to New York. Like, I'll go, but I'm not, how far do you really want me to go? Like, I barely know you. I don't have a home anywhere. I was totally rootless. And so I landed in New York, and it's still a situation where I feel like I have no roots anywhere. I feel like I have when I look around, you guys know I've had this struggle of should I stay, should I go in New York? And it's like, I don't know where I'd go. If there was a place where I could go home, if it was like, oh, I could just go back home, I would do that. But I don't have any place that is the home that I know other than New York City. It's weird.
I had that growing up. We would go, my dad's mom, my grandma, we lived 8 blocks away. So we would go there every 4 days a week, 3 days a week, 2 days a week, whatever.
That's awesome.
And then I moved in college. I left the state, and now I haven't seen my parents. I see them once every 2 years or something. It doesn't feel right. I was just talking to my mom yesterday about that. It's only a 6-hour drive, but it doesn't have that feeling of we're going to pop over to my grandma's house on the weekend.
We can sort of bring up the don't say gay lie, that the hoax from the Democrats. The bill in Florida's true intent was to make sure parents are informed about what's happening with their kids. The left lied and claimed it was don't say gay. I know we've mentioned it several times, but I think this is relevant to what we're talking about. If they're using these manipulations to try and stop transparency, one of the things in the bill is that teachers can't discourage children from talking to their parents.
That's
because
correct.
one of the things these teachers are doing is telling the kids not to talk to their parents. It just seems like there's a lot of external pressures on people to sever themselves from community, family, religion, etc. Ultimately, you add in the transhumanist factor or the neural link and the metaverse, and what you end up with is it feels like in order for there to be a metaverse, you would need these things beforehand.
Yeah. In order to get your hands on kids, you need to break up the family. And the strongest connection, pardon me for saying, is mothers and children. And surrogacy is a massive thing that totally separates the idea that mothers carry children and have children and raise and nurture infants. And so all of it is, there's not much that we're doing that actually reinforces the family. And I know the family in America has got the weird connotations of family, traditional, like homophobic. If you mention family values, all of a sudden you're saying something anti-gay. But it's just really interesting. If I was a predator, if I was a nasty predatory pedophile, I would absolutely love the segregation of children from families and mothers from children, and disempowering mothers. And there's no greater way to disempower mothers than actually rob women of all of their rights and power and vocabulary.
Of all of their rights as a mother. Yeah, to
Yeah.
even call yourself a mother.
Yeah.
It's shockingly horrifying to see how this is going on. And then you have school districts like in Florida, there's a couple of cases. I was talking to a woman, January Littlejohn, the other day, who was suing her school district because they started her daughter on the road to gender transition and didn't tell the family. So another family in Florida where they didn't know that their child was exploring gender identity at school until the child tried to kill herself in the bathroom at the school.
Well,
and then it turned out that they were having like secret gender identity meetings. And
That was Florida, right?
That was Florida.
Which precipitated the parental rights bill.
Right, where they clearly need it.
Yep.
You know, so you have the situation where educators and administrators think that it's their job to help children keep secrets from their parents because all parents are going to be abusers. And they even said in that one case in Florida, well, the family is Catholic, so they're automatically going to be abusive and non-understanding. And the father was like, what our religion teaches us to love our children. Like, what the hell?
I kind of just
You
feel
know?
like, you know, whether it's intentional or not, over the past several decades, there's been a major push for the precursor of transhumanism.
I think it's for sure
Yeah.
intentional. I find that if we're divided into subsects of classes in this species that we have the elite and the plebeians, which is everyone else. And it's really a class of elite, whatever you want to call them, where they are family tight. They are knit units where they like the children run the business that the dad ran, and they're always in contact, and they're flying on their jets to see each other, and their kids know their parents. And then you got everybody else, man, and they're just letting the wild animals graze right now.
I just kind of realized something. You know, I used to make the joke that the future is going to be everybody with shaved heads wearing jumpsuits or giant, you know, cones over their bodies so that no one can tell because of
like Kurt
Harrison
Vonnegut.
Bergeron, is that what it's called?
Yeah.
Bergeron.
Harrison Bergeron, yeah.
Bergeron. And then I just realized why that's wrong. Because people are going to plug themselves into the neural linked metaverse where you are just a gray blob. And everyone will then just be the same generic avatar.
I don't think they will be the same avatar. I think you get to pick your avatar. Oh, to start, yeah.
To start,
for sure.
everyone's going to be the same.
For sure.
So it'll be the blank slate ideology.
And then you have to grind for your outfits and your stuff.
Here's the interesting thing about it, though. If you take every single human being and erase their minds, or if you do this, if you take 1 million babies and you put them in the metaverse where they all start off as genderless, you know, jumpsuit wearing little humans, and they grow and develop, and then, you know, around the time that they're 10 or whatever, it's like, now choose your gender, and they can just pick. I'll tell you this, you would find a massive correlation between biological sex and internal digital world gender. So they can, so if you take a kid and raise them in, you know, the metaverse, I would be willing to bet there's like a 98% chance that kid would be like, I'm a boy or I'm a girl.
They would decide it, or they would be it.
What I'm saying is, if you take a child, a baby, and put them in the metaverse,
Right.
where they never experience the real world and they have no gender, then at 12 years old, they go to school, you ask them, which gender would you choose? They would likely choose their biological sex.
The one they actually are.
Right.
Yeah.
So even in the metaverse,
They'd also really need to stretch out. They'd be like, this feels uncomfortable.
well, their brain is neuralinked. They wouldn't
Right.
they wouldn't know that they're trapped in a pod.
So they
would
wouldn't
be-
even know that they have a body.
No. And so, I mean, they probably would. I think if we enter this transhumanist reality where everyone is a blank slate and everyone's born this way, you're gonna have 1 million babies. They're gonna grow up, and then you're gonna see a 98% correlation with biological sex of the physical world body and the chosen gender in the metaverse.
Is it? Oh, go ahead.
So, well, I was just going to say, look, because I'm far too hopeful to think this is the future for human beings. But also, even if you're right, there's only going to be a certain number of people that can afford to join the you don't think, the metaverse?
Everybody's got a cell phone. It's only a matter of time. It'll start with the rich people, but then give it 10 years, and it's going to be a $20 metaverse pass.
And what about the people that are religious and are family connected in countries like India?
See, I I'm working on a TV show. Yeah, so I can't say too much, but it basically explores the idea that there are a lot of people who will not take the Neuralink and a lot of people who want it. And what Ian mentioned is there's kind of divergence happening within human evolution right now, where you're going to have, what you said, Homo cyberneticist or whatever.
Yeah, something like that.
Homo cybernetic versus Homo sapien. And you're going to have a lot of people who are like, this is the real world. We love our family. We believe in God. It's interesting because we're now facing the real prospect of a divergence between the human species by choice, almost by
Right.
ideology. So
Did you read
Yeah.
E.M. Forrester's The Machine Stops?
Mm-mm.
So basically that's what happens in that. It's like a little novella. I think he wrote it in like 1914 or something ridiculous like that. And basically there's people in pods, and all of their information comes to them through this view screen, and there's a machine that they can ask to bring them food and whatever it is that they need. But this one guy reaches out to his mom, and the way that he has a mother is that the machine set her up with this guy, and they had a child, and then the child was taken to like a nursery pod where it was raised. But anyway, he reaches out to his mom, and he's like, I would really like to breathe some clean air. They live underground in this thing.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
I saw a movie that was basically this. Maybe
Yeah.
it was,
But
this
it's
was,
interesting because in the book, there is this one guy who's like, no, I'm not doing this.
What is it?
He was raised in that environment, and he comes to it on his own that he doesn't want to live like this. And he eventually makes it to the surface of the earth where he dies from the poison air. But he
happy
tries.
ending.
He tries. I mean, it is kind of a happy ending because he's like, I made it.
He
I
liberates
see the
himself.
sun. I see, you know.
Well, so,
And then he dies.
for everybody listening, maybe you guys, the audience is always really good at helping me out with this. There's a show. It might be Electric Dream. Was it Electric Dreams? Is that what the show was called? But I watch all these different sci-fi anthology shows. It's a kid who lives in this, pod where he plays video games all day, and he interacts with his mom over text chat, and they just play platform video games, and food is automatic. And then one day his pod breaks, and he has no choice but to go outside where he thinks the air is toxic, but it's not. And then he goes to his mom and he knocks on the door, and she's freaking out like, what is going on? Why is there a person here? It sounds very similar to what you were describing, but it's,
Yeah, I mean, it sounds similar. I think it's a similar theme in literature.
I wonder if you're going to have like humans on Mars that are Neuralinked, humans on Mars that aren't, humans on Earth that are Neuralinked, humans on Earth that aren't, and you'll have like 4 different species, and then they'll all go to war, and one of them will become the predominant species.
Would you do it? Would you Neuralink, Ian?
Yeah.
You would do it?
Yeah.
some people are saying it was Electric Dreams.
I've been clearing my mind. I was practicing meditation where you have no thought for like, I could have like no thought for an hour. And the metaverse is going to be really important because they're going to be trying to read your thoughts. Mm-hmm. So you got to like, the end of Ghostbusters where like, don't think of anything, and he thinks of the Marshmallow Man.
Right, he sure
Don't
does.
think of anything. You need a clear thought or they're going to be controlling them.
So do you think then in this happy future that we're all looking at, that those in maybe authoritarian religious countries, will they be less likely to hook up?
I don't know about that. It's a great way to control the population. Yeah. So they might just say, we'll create our own isolated introverse where everyone can, it depends on whether you think the people who run, do you think the people who lead Iran are actually religious, or they just want power and control?
Well, I think they're both.
Because then if it's just about power and control, they'll say whatever they have to and absolutely would adopt a metaverse-like system. If they're actually religious, they probably would resist. It depends on how religious or how they interpret their religion.
Oh yeah, there will be religions in the metaverse and stuff where it's like it becomes a religion.
The
it's gonna be-
the funniest
They'll
thing is,
worship like a
it'd be hilarious.
golden calf.
It'd just be hilarious if we're actually in it right now. And
What I think will happen is some people
just
will
don't
they'll start metaversing government, military, and then they'll see it's so powerful to be able to control the machines with your thoughts that even the most religious, zealous will start doing it because it's either that or die. Like, don't fall behind on the technology. It's a weapon. It can be used as a weapon for sure.
If we were in it right now, I don't think my children would be so rude.
but if you know, but I mean, you might not know. You just maybe we're the remnants of a post-apocalyptic civilization that destroyed the planet and purposefully chose to put ourselves in a matrix so that we can live
Oh, that's such a road to hell.
crazy
That whole
thoughts.
thought process is, that's a spiral into a void.
I don't think we are. I just only because I have no evidence. I don't think we're not. I just don't think we are.
No, I agree with that. But I do think it really does feel like that's the direction we're going in. You've got people who jump from one cause to another. You see what Elon Musk tweeted?
Yeah.
I support current thing. It's the NPC meme holding Ukrainian flag with all
Right.
the other flags around it. And I'm like, that's a great point. I'm wondering what it is that has created this large group of millions of people who are mindless drones. It makes me wonder, what if, well, I'll put it this way. I think those people are absolutely going to Neuralink and go into the metaverse and just live and
Sure.
march in lockstep. I also wonder if it's true that we are living in some kind of simulation, maybe we're the people who are actually in the pods and they actually are NPCs, you know?
Oh, the whole NPC thing. I watched that show Free Guy the other day, that
Yeah.
movie
Yes.
with my son. He was like, we should watch this. Because I was telling him that I thought, the whole NPC concept was really wild. And I was like, what if there's NPCs in real life? And he was like, yeah, I've been thinking about that. We should watch this movie. And I'm like,
for
you're
him.
11. You came up with this already.
Yeah.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
I think people can like go into NPC mode and then snap back out of it, and all of a sudden they have sentience again. They're like, "Oh my gosh, what have I done?" Sometimes I'll even wake up and be like, "Wow, what was I doing yesterday? I was in like a weird fog yesterday and today."
I don't know.
I
man.
had this weird thing during COVID where like it took me a little while to realize that this was going on. But, we were like locked down and you couldn't go anywhere and everything was closed. And I started to like just not want to move. I just didn't want to move at all. And then I realized like, oh, you have this weird idea that if you just stop moving, this whole thing will be over sooner.
Oh, we have a correction. Kyle Billing says the movie I was referring to was 2149 The Aftermath. And I remember it now. That
I'm
was
going
it.
to write that down.
Yeah.
That's
It sounds basically like what you talked about.
Yeah.
The air was poisonous and he was in a pod or whatever.
2149 The Aftermath?
Yeah. You know what movie is also cool? Totally irrelevant. It's Time Trap.
I don't know that.
That movie's great.
cool name.
Yeah.
You think people are in such a state of panic right now that they're just kind of like head down, wait for this all to end, wait for the whole war in Iraq to end, wait for the COVID to end, wait for
Russia,
all the pain,
the world
all the
end.
things I'm afraid of. Yeah, wait for the alien invasion that hasn't been false flagged on us yet to end.
Well, we really want things to end. Like as a culture, it seems like we
I
are
don't,
really.
but some people
No,
think so.
I don't want things to end either. But like, I feel like our culture is really gearing up for just being like, and that's it. We burned ourselves out. That's it.
Enough
it's over.
gravity. Gravity hurts.
was
Let's
it-
end it.
Was it? I think Seamus came up with the joke. We were talking about what the future would be like, and he was like, "Wouldn't it be funny if it's like 200 years in the future and everything's just the same?" And some guy like gets in a time machine and goes to the future, and he comes out and everything looks normal like it was when he left.
No.
And he's like, he asked someone what year it was, and they're like, "Oh, it's 22, and he's like, "But everything's the same." And they're like,
Purgatory.
"That was it. Like that was all our ideas. We ran out. That was it." Nothing else after that. We kind of just there's a bunch of more McDonald's, but other than that, nothing real beyond the kiosk.
Right? It's
all
like
we
a
have.
Mike Judge movie.
For sure, they've talked about the end of the world for the millennia since the beginning of humanity. Someone's out there like, it's all coming to an end.
We're
This is it.
constantly obsessed with the end. There's this play, I think it's called American Dream. Maybe it's not, but it's by this playwright Len Jenkin, who's this New York playwright. And at the end of this sort of wild romp, all of these characters just start saying, "I don't care about philosophy. Just tell me how it ends. I don't care about philosophy."
I gotta be honest. I'm at the point where I'm like, I feel like we've reached this a certain number of seasons of humanity, to where they're doing reruns.
Yep. Kind of sucks.
Yeah, it's just a repeat, and then it's just like, okay, it's like watching. I went and saw the Batman this past weekend.
They call it The Batman. That's like what
Yeah.
the movie is called, The Batman.
but the Batman is like a
Yeah,
common thing.
yeah,
It's been around.
okay.
Like that phrase has been around
Okay.
for a long time.
The Batman.
Yeah, there's like cartoons. There's a cartoon called The Batman. There's comics of the Batman. But
If
that
I
was
could have any superpowers, it would be Batman's because he's just rich.
Yeah. I would.
I'd
well,
be chill with that
actually, his
superpower.
superpower is defined as peak human because he's trained on the mountaintops and he's master of like ninjutsu, and he's also rich.
I would
But,
just really go with once we get the rich part, I'd be okay.
yeah.
Good,
But
smart.
I digress.
Very intelligent.
Sorry.
That was a movie where I was, it starts off like pretty good and then slowly gets worse, but never ends. It just doesn't stop. It's like we've caught the bad guy, and I'm like, well, it's finally over. And there's an act 4, and I'm like, okay. And then they introduce a whole bunch of random plot elements, and I'm like, okay, at this point, and I feel like that movie was a great way to understand life in the past decade.
Oh, you
Where it's
think
like-
it's over and then it just keeps going. Gets worse.
Yeah. But more and more absurd.
Yeah.
Like, we went from we've got a pandemic, then we got so a pandemic started. Get this. Let's recount the past couple of years. A pandemic starts. All right. Everyone's like, we're shutting down. The president, who's Donald Trump, by the way, gets on TV and says, we're going to be banning travel with Europe. And I'm sitting there with my friends and we're like, whoa, it's getting serious. And then 2 months later, the biggest riots we've seen in 5 decades, billions of dollars in damage, 30 plus dead. And I'm like, isn't a pandemic happening? And then we're like, whoa, back to the pandemic. And then I'm like, okay, that didn't end. Then intermittent in all of that is like escalation of civil war, people being killed in the streets. And it's like, man, the more we see this stuff, the more it feels like the country's going to collapse. And then all of a sudden, World War III starts.
Right.
It's just like, okay, it really feels like someone,
And you have the new president. Just go ahead. I'm sorry.
Oh, I know. The president's Joe Biden now.
Houseplant.
It's like we thought it was funny that Donald Trump was the president because he's like a TV reality star, and now we have Joe Biden, who is essentially a Mr. Magoo.
Yeah,
like,
he is Mr. Magoo. He sits up there. He hardly says. He like looks at you with his little slinty eyes, and then he whispers. He's
And
like,
he yells.
"It's not going to be World War III. We're not sending troops into Ukraine."
Have you guys seen the South Park episode where it turns out Earth is a reality show, and the aliens are just like, we're done with the show, so they're gonna blow the Earth up? It's like, 3,000 seasons and we're just done.
That's a fun thing in sci-fi where the Earth is actually just totally irrelevant, and they're gonna pave it over for a highway, like in
Douglas
Hitchhikers and
Adams.
stuff. Yeah.
What do you think is going to be the next thing then when normal people get peaked into understanding that they're being massively lied to? So I
don't know if that'll happen.
Neural
I think
net.
it is
No.
happening.
See, so because of what I do and I defend women's rights, then I'm used to the media peddling what I call lies about really important.
What you call? What are?
What are lies?
Factually lies.
And I'm kind of used to that. I'm used to our politicians going along with telling absolute silly lies about biological sex and what words mean. But then we had the pandemic, in which that sort of really propelled more lies and narratives, and really obvious, overt, kind of dishonest narratives. And now we've got the war in Ukraine, which, because of all these lies, I think people are finding it really difficult to believe anything that's being told by the mainstream media. And so where the hell next?
Well, on Thursday, I don't know if you saw this, the White House invited 30 TikTok stars to give them the propagandist lines about the war in Ukraine.
Is that like when
They
Biden
peddled
got
the
Cardi
whole-
B?
Oh my goodness. Yeah. So they, what could be next? What could be next? I think actually we have a lot of stuff going on with voting rights. I wonder if that could be part of it. Like there's like, I'm not even going to get into all that.
But well,
That's a mess,
I don't
though.
think that's big enough. Like, COVID was huge and engulfed everyone. Black Lives Matter was huge and engulfed everyone. Now World War III or whatever you want to
That'll
call it.
engulf everyone.
Yeah.
So
Well, that will be the third
aliens?
thing, right?
That was my first thought was aliens, but I think it's too obvious now.
I think
You
Joe.
think it's too obvious? Like that's just not going to be the plot point because
we know
they
about
would just
talking
be
plasma,
too,
it's just
too
obvious.
obvious.
Yeah, but not. It feels like, we live in a reality where someone is trying to keep people entertained. And it's just like, okay, regular human civilization wasn't
the
working.
elite.
Let's ramp things
The
up.
elite are trying to keep the plebs entertained.
Or it's, in 2016, the Large Hadron Collider fired up for the first time. Is that what happened right before Trump got elected?
That
and
was
then
wild.
Now we're just in this crazy multiverse of madness. Doctor Strange is,
Maybe
That's
that'd be
sort
a
of an
clone
interesting-
of Biden. Do you reckon
What?
he's
A
cloned?
clone? Oh my goodness.
Like Dolly the sheep in the
Yeah.
UK. 'Cause that didn't go well.
Well, I think
There's like 10 different Bidens. There's all just different clones of them.
probably
Different
this
teeth.
probably
All
this
different teeth.
war
Yeah, that
thing
makes
is going to keep ramping up, right?
What is?
Probably the war is going to keep ramping up.
The Ukraine thing?
Yeah.
I think
don't know. I don't see
we
that.
are headed towards hot war between NATO and Russia for sure.
Yeah, I think
The-
that's what we're looking at.
Well, so let me give you guys a direct reference. I don't know if I'm pretty sure I pulled it up, but
Maybe we can send the TikToks.
here we
stars
go.
over
Yeah.
there.
So this is just a general update from Daily Mail. It's not going to be World War III. This is all a bluff. Democrats and Republicans ramp up demands to Biden to send Polish MiG-29 fighter jets to Ukraine because Putin is escalating every day. We also have Estonia, the first NATO country formally through parliament calling for a no-fly zone over Ukraine. Every day we're inching closer and closer to some reason the U.S. or NATO has to be involved in this. And now we're getting these stories. On March 11th, ABC News reported that Russia was moving in with biochem suits. Why would they say that? Because they don't just come out outright and say, Russia fired a biological weapon. They say, remember last week when we saw the Russians wearing those biosuits? This is why. And now already NATO, some U.S. official has said, it's effectively, a red line, it's crossing the line. It's a red line for NATO if Vladimir Putin uses chemical weapons.
Well,
Depends
Biden
what
said
China
that
does.
last week.
Sorry.
He said he was asked by reporters when he gave his little speech on Friday, I think it was Friday, about what if Putin uses biochemical weapons, and Biden said there would be a severe price. But you also have the White House saying that a biochemical weapons attack from Russia would be a false flag. They also talk about that.
Already?
Yeah, they're talking about all kinds of stuff. It's very hard to, I mean, I cover the news every day. We don't cover a lot of like what's going on the ground in Ukraine at Post Millennial. We're not foreign policy experts, so we don't cover that. We cover what's going on in the US about it. We cover what's going on in Canada about it. But like, we're reading all of this stuff every day. We're trying to figure out what's going on. We're trying to understand it. And it gets more and more confusing all the time. It's like, it's hard to know what's going on. We don't speak the language. It's very clear that you have two sides there that are very well versed in how to create propaganda wars, and they're doing it. And we don't know what's what.
It's all lies, man. Both parties, every party to this, whether it's China, whether it's Russia, or the U.S., has a reason to lie. And it's just impossible to know what's going on. You've got these people on Twitter, you've got these people in media, even people on Fox News, it feels like the personalities on Fox News are trying to remain as close to the populist American message of we don't like war as possible, while still crop dusting Vladimir Putin is crossing that line and something needs to be done. But I think Fox News knows their audience would be like, no war. Like, we're not going to play that game.
But Fox News is one of the outlets that keeps sort of talking about how there should be a no-fly zone.
No, that's what I mean.
Yeah.
It's like, I was watching The Five and I was watching Jesse Waters and Brett Baer.
Jesse Waters is like out there being smug, like, hey, we should have a no-fly zone.
That's Jesse.
I mean, it's Jesse.
Yeah, I don't like that.
No, for sure. But it
bugs
does
me.
feel like, even Greg Gutfeld's, somewhat like, I don't know what's going on or what they're saying. You turn on like MSNBC and Rachel Maddow is just like, do as the cult says. Well, I mean, she's not really on TV anymore, but you get my point.
I mean, I discussed before we came on that a guy on the BBC stood and gave a piece to camera with dead Russian soldiers by his feet.
Wow.
I mean, we're just in really nasty realms of dehumanizing soldiers, which I'm guessing didn't have much of a say in whether or not Russia went into Ukraine.
It's remarkable to me how we keep hearing this narrative that Russia's losing. But then, like, when you actually look at the details, it's like, oh, Russia's expanding. Like the media keeps showing these small stories of victories for Ukraine. There's one video going viral. It's like Russian convoy ambushed and one tank gets hit. And then you see all those little stories. But then the big picture is Russia gains more ground. Russia takes over a city. I was in South Korea a couple of years ago. And forgive me, my South Korean family and friends. I went to this museum about a great South Korean general. And it was funny to me because it was like this was a great naval leader who led Korea, because it was like ancient time battles, so it was all of Korea in great war against Japan or something. And I noticed something interesting. It was like in the first battle, a great 500 ships confronted each other, and then it was like you go to the next historical slide. And it's like the great general leading 50 ships against the 300 won a decisive victory. Then you go to the next one and it's like his 12 ships led a decisive victory against the 300 or whatever. And I'm like, okay, so hold on. Like, you're omitting the 9 out of 10 times he lost and only showing me the 1 out of 10 times he won. It's, that's kind of what it feels like is happening here with Ukraine.
Right.
They show all these little victories, but the bigger picture is Russia is slow rolling and moving in and taking over.
But what's the aim with those lies? Is it to make Putin really angry that we're talking about him being a loser?
I think
demoralize the Russian troops so that they fight worse.
Maybe,
Right.
but I don't think they're watching this stuff. I think it's more so to convince the American people that we can and will win.
Yeah, that does that too.
And then when there's a
More
chemical
send more
attack,
defensive.
they can be like, oh no, look, guys, we're winning, but we got to end it now because of what Russia just did. And then all of a sudden, Russia is winning. Then all of a sudden NATO comes in and flattens Russia. I can't. It
Do you
just
think NATO? So you think NATO is going to just go in?
NATO
what would
has
they do?
30.
Would they like
NATO has 30,000 troops right now in Norway doing war games, and 50 warships moved into the region, which is it's the Baltic Sea. It borders Russia, and it's kind of like, is that a coincidence? You know, they want to cancel this ICBM test to de-escalate things, but then send 30,000 troops for a war game, you know, with 50 warships. I don't think they're up there for war games. I think they needed a reason to send all of those troops and get them ready.
and just leave them there?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because Russia's been amassing troops. We know that.
Right. We know that. That's for a long time. I was in a cab actually recently with a friend of mine, and it was an Uber, and the Uber driver was like we were like, hey, how you doing? And he was like, I actually just got word today that I'm shipping out in a couple days. I put in for my retirement in August, and now instead they're shipping me to Germany.
Wow.
Oh. Yeah.
Jeez.
To Germany.
Yeah.
Interesting.
I'm really curious what you guys think of Trevor Noah coming out and saying, basically, if Trump were in charge, this would not be happening, and he thinks that Biden probably wishes he could bring Trump in as president wildcard to get.
Did he?
Wait,
He
Trevor
did. He
Noah
said
said that?
You
Yeah,
didn't
he
see
sure
that?
did. It was
Wow.
pretty
Shocked.
amazing. We
It was
covered
really
that.
incredible.
Yeah. I
Bill,
mean,
Bill
I think
Maher
that,
said something similar.
Yeah.
Well, Trump said to, I think, Sean Hannity the other night that he said something to Putin that made Putin clear that he should not invade Ukraine. It was probably something like, I'm a crazy man and I might just nuke you.
He said he would nuke Moscow.
Right. Yeah.
Trump came. So this is the craziest thing because I think it's insane, and it's one of the things that worries me about Trump. But if it works, I guess. The initial reporting was that New York Post ran a story saying Trump reportedly told Xi and Putin. He told Putin, if you go into Ukraine, I will hit Moscow. He told Xi, if you go into Taiwan, I will hit Beijing.
Right.
And both leaders were like shocked. But hold on. Trump then came out and bragged. I told him I would nuke Moscow, and he knew I meant it. And I'm like,
He's like, he believed it maybe like 5%, but that's all you need.
Yeah.
is that what he
But
said?
I mean,
Yeah, in the phone call.
the thing too, though, is like the benefit of having Trump as president, like he was essentially an anti-war president. The benefit of having him as president was that he was so unpredictable and crazy that no one knew what he was going to do. He was like the homeless guy on a corner with a knife and crazy crack eyes.
True.
You know, so America was like this crazy, unpredictable nation
Not with
with
a knife.
nukes run by. Well,
No, it's
with
like
what?
someone
With what?
handed him an AR.
Right.
And
No,
then
he has a
everyone's
grenade
like,
in
whoa.
one hand and the pin is over here.
I think he was
You
a
know?
predictable man.
He
I think
actually
he was
was.
a
I think
he was
predictable, large-shouldered, kind of bullish bloke. I think you knew
Interesting.
exactly what he was going to do.
He gave
Which is
off,
like
Which
what, a
was-
crazy thing.
Well, I think he'd out. Oh, I can't. I'm trying not to swear. He'd if it was a urinating contest,
Uh-huh.
he would always be the
gotta win.
guy to win. Yeah. So
Yes,
I think
that's correct.
I think Americans should have felt safer in his hands than ever in Biden's.
He-
I felt
he's-
safer with a crazy man at the helm than somebody who's eminently reasonable.
Well, a crazy guy that
But
wants
Biden's
to win.
not. Biden's sleepy.
He kind of created
He's-
like a
yeah,
crazy
he's
persona
not
Trump
around.
did, and it worked in cases like with Putin. Thought maybe he would hit Moscow with a nuke, but the American people believed it. They bought into it as well, so they thought he was crazy. Half of them thought he was really crazy.
I feel like
Turned out he was one of the more stable presidents
I agree.
militarily.
I feel like Trump was the kind of guy to where you could brag about doing something that's kind of like amoral or
well, he did.
no, not Trump. I'm saying
Okay.
if you said something like Trump could never beat me in a pissing contest, Trump would be like, when I take a leak, I spray it so far.
So far.
Everybody knows it. Everybody knows. I can write my name in cursive.
Unavoidable.
Like no.
He'd be like, I throw a ball faster than Trump. He'd be like, no, I throw the best balls, the furthest balls. I throw them all.
I throw my balls.
No, but only weird things. Like if you said, I'm a pro bowler and I could beat Trump at bowling, he'd probably be like, well, he's a great bowler. He's very good. Everyone respects him.
agrees, yeah.
But it was weird things he would lie about where you're like, why is he so adamant about like that being the thing?
But that's a reliable guy, right? Because you know that he's going to say, that when people challenge him. So someone like Putin or China, when they're sort of coming up and saying, "Oh, we're gonna be the world superpower," he's like, "No way! I'm the superpower that ever walked the earth."
That 5% thing is actually a really great point. Because everybody knows that Joe Biden's got a 0% chance of launching any nukes or taking any hard military action.
He's not going to do a thing.
And everybody probably says, even Putin and Xi would be like, Trump probably won't do it. And then their advisors go, probably? And it's like,
They're like,
let's
Biden's
chill out.
asleep. He's never going to do anything.
Well,
He's
Biden is
not
never
even
going to do
awake.
anything. No, he's a
Well-
useless, doddering old man.
He'll yell, "Come on, man," to Putin.
Right.
Come on, man.
And then maybe he'll whisper and like sniff
on,
some little
man.
girl's hair.
Yeah, he could. Yeah, he's reliable in sniffing women.
He's great at that.
So we have Chicken City, which is our new live stream where it's just the chickens doing their thing, and chickens are animals, so they do animal behaviors. But people calling whenever Roberto the rooster is getting feisty, people saying Roberto giving the old Biden sniff to the girls and stuff like that. A good old Biden sniff, and I'm like, that's one way to put it.
Biden knows better.
It's funny because it's a rather family-friendly show. It's just chickens, and we make jokes, and I threw blueberries to them and stuff like that. But the comments are hilarious when people like make jokes about chickens. And
One
Did
of
you get
our
him to eat the
people
blueberries?
on our social
get
media
them
team,
to. They fight for it.
Oh, I thought they didn't. Those the young ones. They don't eat them.
Oh, the
they don't
little
know
ones
their
were
food yet.
confused. They were like,
they
"What's
didn't like the
that?"
blueberries.
Kind of dumb.
One of the people on our social media team, Beth Bache, she's a reporter of ours. She was in Ottawa covering the truckers and everything. She's terrific. Every time Biden does a sniffy thing, she's like, I'm getting this clip. Just wait. He's sniffing people again. He's sniffing the girls again. It's wonderful.
I love it. Good
This
for
is
her.
our reporter,
Yeah, it's
John.
great.
His beat is Biden sniffing little girls.
Yeah.
And he's like, yeah, basically, I just watch all of his presentations and I just pull the clips of him sniffing women.
Is he getting nutrition from people when he does that? Because I know when you smell something, you get particles of the thing go into your
Oh,
body
this
when
is
you're
even
smelling
getting
it.
That's
grosser and
worser.
grosser.
Yeah, like when you're in
Biden-
the bathroom, you're stinking.
Biden can't help it. He sustains himself.
I require nutrients.
Yeah, he's a smeltarian.
I have to smell them.
Smeltarian.
I need some energy.
Yeah, he smells. He latches on and all right.
I mean, that's gross
It's like a
because a
vampire.
good smell will wake you up, and that's really gross if that's what he's doing.
It's nasty.
Let's go to super chats. If you have not already, smash that like button. Subscribe to the channel. Share the show. Take the URL. Post it wherever you want if you really do want to help out. Go to timcast.com. We're going to have a members-only show coming up around 11 or so p.m. We record it, and then we publish it live. We publish it recorded at 11 or so p.m. So check it out and support the show at timcast.com. But let's read some here super chats. We got Aussie Trutler says, hello there from Chicken City. I think Chicken City is our fastest growing new show. We got 11,300 subscribers in 1 week.
Reliable cast,
One
All
week,
right.
absolutely. All right, let's see. We got Silver Bear says, hello, Tim and crew. I sent my resume and portfolio to pitches at Timcast. I wasn't sure where else to send it. I love writing and want to try doing it for a living. We will look out for it right now. I'll tell you this, guys. We're looking for... I don't know how to describe it. We need people who skate and want to film vlog stuff every day because we essentially need like an executive producer for the vlog. There's a bunch of ideas we have. We want it to be fun with cool activities like we launched the race cars over the garage roof, but we also want to do just like gags with the crew. So like we did the thing where Seamus tortured people, pretended to.
Great.
So just fun stuff like that, but we need someone whose job it is to basically focus on that. So if you're interested,
Yeah, if you could do lighting and sound design as well, that'd be huge.
lighting and sound design.
Yeah, if we could. Yeah, I think if it looks like cinema quality, then
No, I don't know
it's
about
like,
that.
It'll get like a
We-
magnitude more followers.
That would that'd have to be a different person.
Maybe.
I mean, I'm
yeah, the
talking about
producer
someone
would-
who's like a charismatic personality and writer, not a production person.
Yeah, I'd be down to have a good tech on
But
board.
we'll take it all. So I'll
It's always
hire.
good to have a good
we can-
tech person.
Yeah, we can hire.
sound is everything.
We can hire 10 people if they're like, we're going to put together a show and have a good time. But, ultimately, we got so much stuff going on here. We just need someone who wants to organize it. We've got the airbag launch thing. We built a new patio. We're building new skate ramps. We've got Ferdamistan and we got chickens and we're going to get goats. So we just need someone whose job it is to like wrap those ideas up. And so, put into the vlog, do jokes and things like that. All right, let's see. Memotype says, Shoe on Head did a great video about Cuties. She does a giant breakdown of just how messed up it all is. She watched it, so you don't have to. Yeah, here's the challenge, right? How are you going to criticize something you haven't seen? And I'm like, well, the issue is I've seen the trailers and I've seen relevant clips from, critique. And it's like, maybe I didn't see the scene where the little girl talks to her mom about baking cookies, but I don't want to watch the movie and watch it. I wouldn't want to watch the 3-minute dance routine. But it is a challenge. It is. Because, I guess she watched it, so I don't have to. You know what I mean?
Is it still on there? Is Cuties still on Netflix?
I'm pretty sure it is.
I think
Yeah.
so, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, someone... So we have 2 chickens with no names because they were adopted. And someone wanted us to name them, at least one of them, Shoe on Egg.
Oh, that's really
so,
cute.
So we did.
Yeah.
And I guess the other one is Hensaki because
I like that
Yeah.
too.
because it's like a goldish, it's a light brownish, like a burnt. It's almost red. It's not quite. But they were like Hensaki, and I was
That's
like, that's a
cute.
really good one.
Yeah.
You know, Hensaki. Someone else said Hen Shapiro.
Yeah, I like that too.
But I'm like,
not
no,
bad.
but we would need a little rooster. You know what I mean?
yeah. a
Yeah,
little black
that would have to
chicken.
be a rooster, a little
Yeah.
black rooster.
Yeah. Yeah.
With like,
Yeah.
We have
Yeah.
one.
A bossy little black rooster.
with like, you know,
Bossy.
little tuft
Little-
of,
yeah, like a
little tuft of
yes.
feathers. That'd be cute.
It'd be adorable.
The Mad Machinist says, Ian, Carlin did it, the 7 words, because he believed censorship of those words was wrong. Your logic in this analogy would mean the creators believed this behavior should be acceptable.
Yeah, I think they did. That's why they did it. It's like a social statement of like, look in the darkness, look at the darkness. But like looking at something that's horrific so that you can say, hey, I saw it, isn't necessarily good for you.
Michael McCarthy says, wow, is that Kellie-Jay on Tim Pool? Well done. I think this might finally be the sign that I really am in a simulation. This is a great part of the simulation, though. Well, then definitely check out our members only segment coming up at 11 p.m. This will be a lot of fun. All right. Legima Thigayon, I'm probably always pronouncing that wrong, says, Dear Kelly/Posie, I admire your courage in the face of the irrational crusading mob of woke progressive fanatics on both sides of the ocean. We need far more people like you. I know you'll never give up your fight. Be well, from Florida.
Oh, thanks.
There you go. All right. Darun Albane says, Tim, the released maps for the Russian strikes in lab locations. The maps are distorted, impossible to line up. Interesting. Did you guys see The View called for the arrest of Tulsi and Tucker Carlson?
Wild.
Yes.
Yeah.
They actually called for the Department of Justice to do it, just like the Department of Justice was going to investigate parents for being upset about
Yep.
mask mandates in schools.
And they said, people used to get arrested for this kind of stuff. The DOJ needs to investigate this. It's like,
It's called McCarthyism.
well, you call it whatever. I
Well
mean,
done.
It's just, you know, people are like, we went from Civil War to World War III. And I'm like, no, we didn't. We went from Civil War and, added in World War III.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
it's just layering it on top.
yeah.
It's like the 7-layer dip. We just all need some chips.
So great.
Sir
Wonderful.
Bansalot says, hey, Tim, this is concerning student loans. In Australia, we have something called the HECS system, where you have your taxpayer-backed student loans you can't default on with no interest. What stops Americans from having this?
We do,
Ineptitude?
don't we have? We do have federal student loans.
Yeah, but they have interest rates.
Yeah, they do have interest rates.
Yeah, he's saying they don't.
Oh,
Because my thing is, I don't think we should just forgive everyone's student loan debt, but we should eliminate the interest rates. So it's like pay back what you borrowed, and maybe with inflation or something. So it's like you got to pay back the money you borrowed. You know what I mean?
I think you probably shouldn't be allowed to get federal student loans for degrees in gender identity.
Yes.
I think we should not give out student loans at all. It's like if you want to go to
yeah.
college, get a job, save up money. 2 years later, go to college.
Or maybe the college would pay for it. But the problem with your thing is then only rich people would go to college, which was what the student loan program was trying to fix anyway.
And all it did was made everyone's lives worse.
And it made college way more expensive.
Right. It didn't solve anything.
Yeah, because now all these schools have giant endowments.
But you could also work your way through college. People do that.
That used to be a thing as well.
Yeah.
When like a state school was $12,000 a year, you could do that.
Yep.
Now you can't.
I mean, if you link it
65.
if you link it to inflation by now, well, maybe by next year it'll be about 400%.
Yeah.
Wow.
You'll pay back so much.
And
Yep.
so much of what universities are administrative departments.
Yep.
I mean, it's so peculiar. Like in the UK, you could do a degree in golf.
In golf?
Yeah.
What?
Yeah, all right. Folklore and mythology is always interesting, right? All right. We got Mike Hillier. He says, Tim, you are wrong at what a MRA is. You are repeating MSM narrative. Vosh is acting like a feminist. Talk to Karen Straw, or is it Strawn, about MRAs. And then we have another one saying, Tim, please stop calling Vosh an MRA. Then we have Zarank saying Vosh is not an MRA. No, my friends, you all don't understand. You're looking at the phrase MRA as though it's a proper noun. I'm referring to Vosh as the non-proper noun. He is an advocate. He is advocating for the rights of men. I didn't say all rights. I didn't say he was in line with your proper noun view of the acronym MRA. If a human being says that they're going to go online and advocate for the rights of men, they're a men's rights advocate or activist. There's not one group of, like feminists have a bunch of different branches. MRAs can have a bunch of different branches. He's a leftist MRA.
He's definitely not a feminist of any stripe, including the many terrible feminists that walk the earth.
Yeah. All right. The Wrong Writer says playing World of Warcraft while watching this. Scary. Also, have a look at Norman Dodd on tax-exempt foundations. Very eye-opening discussion. World of Warcraft was scary, man. I was addicted to it in like 2006 for like a good month or two. I would do nothing but wake up, play. And I always tell people, South Park did that episode where they gained all that weight and got really fat from playing Warcraft. That's not true. You become extremely malnourished.
Oh, because you just don't eat?
It's called a bio when you're raiding with your friends. And it's like a bio meaning you got to eat, drink, or go to the bathroom. Typically it's a bathroom thing, but people would be like, no. It's like, hey, we're going to go, we're going to go raid, whatever. And then people are like, I got to take a break, man. I got to get some food or something. And be like, oh, come on, dude. Are you kidding? We're like, we want to start. We got to wait for you. We got 40 people. And you'd be like, oh, okay, or whatever. So I think I dropped like 20 pounds and I was like super thin because you'll drink water. And all I was doing was ordering a calzone.
So what did you say?
Yeah.
World of
Warcraft. World of Warcraft.
Just write that down.
Yeah.
Well, when you're
I was thinking that too. Like, this is like when I was in middle school and I saw the Karen Carpenter documentary and it talked about how she was anorexic and like she lost all this weight. And I was like, that's a killer idea.
It's a great idea, right?
She's a
I
great
should
Quite
try that.
literally a killer idea.
I know.
Yeah. I ended up so hungry. It was like half a day.
Do it, yeah.
All right, we got Caltox Reaper says, Tim and Ian, you both need to watch the anime Ghost in the Shell standalone complex. It covers a lot of what is being talked about. Good sir, I have seen it. I have seen the movie, and I know absolutely about Ghost in the Shell. Yeah, it's great. The Laughing Man thing's fantastic. I love the graphic. It's a guy, he basically can hack people's brains so they can see what he wants them to see. And so when they try and look at him on cameras and the surveillance footage, he hacks the system so you only see this Salinger quote. I thought what I would do is I would pretend I was one of those deaf mutes just like spinning around a smiley face. So they're like, they ask people like, what did he look like? He's like, I can't remember. So when your brains are cyberized or in the network, powerful people or hackers are going to decide what you can think or remember. That's the future, man.
I think they'll call it cyberdized. Like hybrid.
Cyberdized?
Yeah, like hybrid, but with cyber.
Cyberized, maybe?
I don't know.
Yep, cyberized. All right. Caitlin says, I was a tomboy as a kid in the 80s and very feminine now. I'm so thankful my parents didn't just think I really wanted to be a boy.
Girl, me too. Same.
I mean, I'll tell you something right now that's probably offensive to a bunch of people. The first 1080 done on a skateboard was done by, I think, a 12-year-old boy.
Yeah.
There's no 12-year-old girl who is also, hitting the first 1080. I mean, it's a massive spin. And so I've brought this up to people because there's a lot of people who argue like, oh, puberty is the defining point at which a male gains the advantage in sports. And I'm like, then why are there like 10 and 12-year-old boys competing at the national level in skateboarding, but no girls?
I want to just shout out all you girls out there. But from a guy's perspective, women are the coolest thing on earth. So please cherish it. It's amazing. Go with it.
I like that.
I think that's very true for like women as well, though, to be honest. Not like equally, because men are just like obviously obsessed with women. But the joke people would always say is, on the cover of a men's magazine, is it a man or a woman? It's a woman. And the cover of a woman's magazine is a man or a woman? It's a woman.
Oh, yeah, the woman, dude.
Yeah.
But that's because men don't look as good in women's clothes, and those magazines are about selling
Speak for
clothes.
yourself, lady.
Oh, okay. All right.
It's interesting you talk about the puberty thing because when advocates in the UK to try and stop women's sports being invaded by men, they will talk about puberty. Well, actually, the advantages that men have over women is not just puberty. It's bone density, it's muscle fiber, it's all these, it's cardiovascular system, it's muscle memory even of remembering how strong you were before a little bit of testosterone suppressant, which never suppresses the testosterone to a point the same as a woman.
It's impossible to suppress prenatal testosterone when you're already born.
The other
And so
thing
that
too
impacts
is like
muscle fiber and bone density and all that stuff.
the average of women's testosterone that women naturally have in their bodies, I think, is like the highest is like 2.4, I think.
It's very low, isn't
Like nanomoles or whatever per liter. And for the IOC, their regulation for biological males who want to compete in women's sports is that your testosterone has to be 10 nanomoles per liter, which is still multitudes and multitudes higher than what the highest average women's testosterone in their bodies would be.
If a woman had that level of testosterone, she'd be accused of doping and cheating.
Yes.
She'd have a beard.
Yeah, at least.
Good.
Yeah, a lot of stuff.
So we got Tara says low fertility is a result of poor diet. Eating low protein diets, low animal fats, and high vegetable and seed oils completely ruins your hormones. I'll mention this. We talked about a little bit to Ryan Long and Danny Polishchuk about NAD. You guys familiar with that?
Yeah.
Something I think Joe Rogan talks about it quite a bit. Nicotinamide adenine dinucleotide, and I've been getting that. But part of that means I get I get like basically a physical every time they check my blood pressure. Since I started doing a higher protein diet and a lower sugar diet, my health has like massively improved. Massively.
Higher protein, less sugar.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, I think it's fairly obvious, right? Like everybody says, like cut the carbs and eat better protein. So I've been eating more. I've been eating way more protein instead of a snack being sugar based. My snacks are protein based. That was the big change. For one, I snack a lot less now, which is probably why I lost weight. When I do snack, we have bacon. We have little individually wrapped bacons. You just rip them open.
I mostly just eat fruit when I snack.
High sugar.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's delicious.
And liver intensive too.
Apples?
Yeah.
Apples are hurting my liver.
I just drink, drink wine.
Well, I'm not a nutritionist, so don't take my advice, but I was reading about how fructose, fruit sugar, has to be processed in the liver, so it's
minus the fiber. If you do just apple juice, it's going to go right to your liver and then convert into sugar. If you eat it with the fiber, which is
I eat actual
it goes
apples
longer.
and fruit. I gave up meat for Lent.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So where do you get your protein from?
I've been eating a lot of fish.
That's meat.
Eggs and stuff. Yeah.
Well,
you gave up like red meat or something.
I gave up not fish. I gave up not fish for Lent.
Well, that works.
Yeah.
I mean, fish is actually way better for you.
Yeah.
So
my son, I've been making all of this shrimp dishes. I'm learning to cook Chinese fried shrimp.
Good.
Spectacular.
Sounds great.
Wow.
There's a bunch of salmon and crab cakes in my freezer right now.
this is interesting. Vic says, my girlfriend has been off birth control for a year and she feels like a different person. She's happier, better appetite, more sexual, less emotional. They're turning the frogs gay. Well, I don't know about birth control going to frogs, but that was a pesticide, wasn't it?
Atrazine?
Yeah, and I think later on they said that they were wrong. Or it was
wasn't
limited.
making them gay.
Well,
Well,
hermaphroditic.
no,
is,
but
I
the
think,
whole
story.
study said that they weren't sure it was atrazine in the first place.
Yeah. Could have been.
It was a hypothesis or something.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was a pesticide leaking into groundwater was mutating the endocrine systems of frogs.
Yeah, we didn't really touch on pesticides, herbicides, fungicides getting into the food supply.
Oh, you know what we
water
got?
supply.
We went and bought silky chickens. You saw
What
them.
are silky?
The ones that-
those little cute ones.
Yeah, they look like llamas.
They're so cute.
So
And
cute.
the woman who sold them to us also sold us some honey that she found in an abandoned house.
Oh,
That's weird.
not creepy at all.
Yeah, I was super excited. It's the best honey I've ever tasted.
Did you end up tripping your face off or
No.
something?
Or what's
Honey's
going on now?
antimicrobial, so it's
Okay.
like you could put it on your wounds to clean it. So long as it's done by a proper beekeeper, it's probably fine. Now, do you trust the beekeeper? Because
What beekeeper? It was found in an abandoned house. You don't know anything
no,
about it.
the lady
She's
was a beekeeper.
housekeeper.
Oh,
So
okay.
she also has like legit farm honey. But she said, I found this one in an abandoned house. If you want it, you can buy it too. And I was like, yeah. Well, actually, I wasn't paying attention. It was everyone else who heard it. And I was like, I'll just take it all. And then I was tasting it and they're like, oh, that's the one from the abandoned house. And I was like, tastes great. So what they say is if the bees are in an abandoned house, then the older parts of the honeycomb are going to have like mold and garbage on it. But the newer parts are probably clean and safe. And honey is antimicrobial. So
She didn't find a jar of honey in the
No,
abandoned house.
she found a beehive.
Nest.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's different.
And then she took
I'm like
the honey.
picturing this jar, and I'm like, you really
Enchanted jar. Of
just
honey.
dug into the.
Yeah.
Have you guys ever eaten the psychedelic honey?
No.
Which one is it?
It's like the Himalayans will climb the mountain and they'll go get the honey and they'll eat it and
Manuka?
they trip their balls off.
Why
no,
is
no,
it-
it's not Manuka honey.
Why is it?
I'm looking into it. Gray anotoxin is maybe the chemical. They call it mad honey.
There was this
Really?
crazy thing that happened in Brooklyn
Mad
where
honey?
all of
Should
these
get some if it's
bees,
legal. That's awesome.
these bees got into some sort of industrial facility, and that ended up in all the honey, and all the honey was like weird red color.
Yeah,
and
no,
stuff.
it was a candy factory.
It was a candy factory?
And the waste runoff.
Yeah.
The bees were drinking the sugar.
That's what it was.
funky.
And so they made
That's
red
funky.
candy honey.
Where do you
Yeah.
get the trippy honey though? What's the deal?
Where do you find it? Well, I know the mountains of the Himalayas. They'll like climb long distances to get to it. I don't know though. I have never heard of this mad honey before. I'm looking into it.
Interesting.
Eddie Jones says, I'm 21 years old and you're helping me learn about a lot of things I was blind of as a noob in the world. Thanks for the solid info and the sources to back it all. Thanks for the 20s, Ian. Chicken City is life.
Dude, thank you so much, man. If I could have been 21 years old and had access to a show like this that I could interact with, I would have loved it. So thank you for putting me in perspective like that.
All right. Josh Froman says, hey, Tim, Ohio just passed constitutional carry. What are your thoughts? Man, Indiana's going to pass constitutional carry. Alabama just signed constitutional carry.
Yep.
I think it was constitutional carry, right, in Alabama?
Yeah.
Was it?
Yeah.
What does that
And-
mean? You can just carry a weapon. You can carry your gun.
Yeah.
Just have it around.
And
You
there's
can-
no,
No permits, whatever. You can.
you just
It's
get
like
to
open
have it.
Carry,
Yeah.
You're totally pro that.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. In West Virginia, you can just pick up a gun and walk around outside and
And like just have it.
no one cares.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like you'll see a guy with a gun on his hip and you're just like, oh.
How many states have that versus how many don't?
Growing number.
I mean, now I think
Really
it's like 15 or
interesting.
16
Yeah.
maybe.
Wow.
You want to look it up?
Growing, yeah.
Are they
What's
the
the
same
argument?
ones? What?
What's the argument for it?
That we have the Second Amendment.
Yeah, the Constitution.
I mean, the fact that it's getting passed now.
Oh yeah.
Like, what? Why?
So-
why are they
so-
suddenly doing it?
The Constitution, Second Amendment, the right to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. Yet throughout most of history, we didn't actually uphold our own constitutional rights.
Right. Okay.
And so in the 80s, even, it was difficult to get concealed carry permits. Like, so they were like, oh, no, if you want to have a gun, you better show everybody. And people were like, the Constitution is clear, right? So recently, I think it's because I think the populist libertarian wave has been winning very much in the United States over the past decade. And so now we're seeing states basically say the law on guns is the Constitution. Of course, you still have the feds. The federal government bans a ton of weapons, and it's absurd, and there's nothing you can do about it. But in Texas, for instance, they passed a law, I'm pretty sure, saying that if you make and use a suppressor in Texas, the feds can't do anything. Like, it's the state allows it.
Because you can't. The feds are only in charge if you cross state lines.
But the feds are still arguing, it's illegal, you can't do it.
Part of it too is that Biden is so gun control crazy. He has all of these ideas about preventing people from having guns, and
Yep.
was recently in New York talking to Mayor Adams after 2 police officers were murdered by a career criminal who shot them with his gun.
Actually, New York just launched their new criminal division. It's actually, the NYPD has actually deployed a bunch of criminals.
Oh yeah. Okay.
Yeah,
that
the
makes sense.
anti-gun unit.
Yeah. That's like common sense in New York City.
So New York City is, in my opinion, in violation of the Constitution because they make it impossible to get a gun.
New York City is in violation of the Constitution all over the place.
Good
that's
point.
bad.
In several very key places.
Consistently and always. But I guess the people who live there tolerate it. So, but they created a new anti-gun unit. These are cops who basically go out to arrest people who are, constitutionally carrying weapons because statutorily in the city, they don't let you do it. I think that's wrong. I think if you want to make an argument about whether or not you should be allowed to have guns, you got to change the Constitution first. So,
I got a list of the open carry number. It's from the Wikipedia open carry. It's better to look at
open carry is
visual.
different from constitutional carry. Open carry means that you're allowed to carry your gun so long as other people can see it. Constitutional carry means you can conceal it if you want to. You don't need a permit.
Oh yeah.
So if you're in a state
encompassing.
that doesn't have that and they require you to get a permit and the cop finds you have a gun, you get in trouble. The moment they sign into law, constitutional carry, you can take your gun, put it in your waistband, cover it up, and walk outside. And
So I think we have 23 states that are constitutional carry.
23!
Yeah.
Wow.
A
Wow.
lot.
According to Wikipedia.
That's fantastic. Glad to hear it. A well-armed population is a polite and hard-to-oppress population.
And then 3 more states that have a limited form of permitless concealed carry. Illinois, New Mexico, and Washington.
Yeah, I'm wary of anyone who wants to strip power away from the people to give to themselves. And when the argument about gun control is almost always that the government should have the right to... right now, agents of the government can have select fire rifles. It means full auto or burst or semi-auto. And they say the regular people can't. Politicians can have guns.
Right.
So celebrities can have bodyguards who are armed. And the way it works in New York and New Jersey and Maryland is basically if you're wealthy and famous enough, you can have a gun. So they say you have to give a legitimate reason why you need the gun. And if you say, like, for my safety or my constitutional rights, they kick you out. But if you say, I'm rich and famous, they'll say, we got you. Don't worry about it.
In New York,
Special
there's
people.
like, you have to have an interview
Yeah.
to explain why you want the gun.
Yeah.
And you can't just be like, I just want it because I want it.
Yep.
That's not part of
I was told
the jam.
the easiest way. I was told New York ultimately just like won't give it to you. But in New Jersey, Maryland, and New York, the most likely way to actually get one is to show deposit slips for cash in excess of $5,000.
Oh, that's interesting.
Because then the argument is I carry large sums of cash for my job doing deposits, and I need to be able to defend myself because people who find out will rob me.
What if you just carry large sums of cash so you can have a receipt so you can buy a gun?
Well, I don't think the cops are going to look into your
They're
business
not going to
practices,
check it out if you just take it out and put it back in, have a receipt.
When it comes to constitutional carry, all the states are pretty much uniform, except for California is all fragmented. All over California, you have different rules, and all over New York
California is
State,
not a constitutional carry state. California is you go to jail for having a gun state.
they have a May issue concealed permit in a lot of areas of California.
Oof.
Would there be a correlation between states who don't have constitutional carry with other sort of infringements of the Constitution? So California, for example, I would say it was anti-constitutional to put men in women's prisons.
Which they, of course, do.
Yeah, but I think
so does
Biden's-
Washington.
Well,
but Biden's
that's-
put forward a defense of it, right?
Yes, Biden is pro putting men in women's prisons,
but
as is
hold on.
the unelected governor of New York State.
It's a potential 14th Amendment argument, but that's it. And it doesn't clearly define what the violation is. So that's a harder question, to be honest.
Right. So,
So-
I probably don't really understand your constitution. But I'm just wondering if there is a correlation between not having a constitutional carry and other things that may be like free speech, all those sorts of things.
So the first covers freedom of speech. Second is guns. Third is to be free from the government quartering soldiers in your home or providing your home as, providing your home to soldiers. The fourth is unreasonable search and seizure. But the 14th is equality under the law. So you see a lot of arguments about the 14th Amendment. And so there's interesting Supreme Court rulings. I believe what you're describing would be a constitutional violation of the 14th because the way we as the United States have decided equality can work is that so long as there is, you can separate groups so long as they have equal of something. So it's really funny because you can't when it comes to race, but you can when it comes to gender. Don't ask me why. I'm not a Supreme Court justice. But it used to be that you could have a white and a black bathroom so long as both groups got a bathroom. We ended that because now it's like separate but equal was wrong. Now you can't do that. But under the exact same law, the 1964 Civil Rights Act, you can do that for men and women. I think this is what's ultimately going to poke a hole and shatter gender segregation, which ultimately means males and females will share all of the same spaces no matter what in the future. Because the argument is, if the argument back in the day was, if there's two different bathrooms that both work the same way, then we're allowed to have race differentiated bathrooms because it's equal, right? We said no to that. Okay, well, we do that now for men and women. So now we're starting to see the left argue, okay, well then how can you have gender separate but equal? Nope, there should be one bathroom for everybody. But this is happening in New York, where instead of doing a men's room and a women's room, they're doing 5 individual bathrooms with doors you just lock. And so now they're just all genderless single stalls.
Yeah, but are they those weird doors that you have over here that we don't have in the UK,
No. These are
right the way
room.
down to the floor.
This would be like walking into a broom closet. Like you walk into an actual room and
It
close
would
the
be
door. and lock
walking
it.
into your own WC with
Right,
nobody
but
else
it
in
still
it, with
doesn't
a sink,
stop
with
men
a sink. and everything.
urinating on the seat.
Yes,
That's
yeah, all
right.
that.
That's an issue. That's an issue.
Yep, all that
Still
stuff.
allowed.
But that's one of the things we're starting to see from it is instead of doing a men's room and a women's room with urinals or they'll just make 4 individual rooms.
The Romans would all sit in a big room together. You
Yeah.
ever look at Roman bathrooms?
Have you been to a
Right.
sports bar?
Just
Ian?
toilet, and they're all just sitting
They'd
there
all
looking at
just
each other.
sit there like,
I don't know if they might have wooden dividers. I don't
I
know.
don't know.
They
that
ate
they
a lot
did.
of meat. I
what's
think
that?
they just ate too much meat, so they had to sit
But
for
I don't know if they had
hours.
men
right?
and women together. Were they
Let's
I don't know.
mixing genders?
Did
let's-
they at the room at the baths?
I think it was just
eating while they poop. Let's grab one more super chat because we're going to do this member segment. We have Colton Rader says, what is your thoughts on Donald Trump going on a podcast and YouTube removing it within 24 hours, over 5 million views? That was the Nelk Boys Full Send podcast. Yep. And the issue is you've got to be really savvy on YouTube's rules to be able to pull off a show like this. So my friends, you may notice that many of your favorite creators often get strikes and we don't. We've gotten one warning from Alex Jones when he was on the show, and I think it was BS. And I think it's proof that YouTube enforces their rules arbitrarily. But there's also many things that we're cognizant of, and we dance through the landmine field. There are a lot of people that either are unwilling to or just don't know how YouTube has aligned their landmines everywhere. And so you'll see people who, like the Nelk Boys, talk to Trump. Trump said things, and they were like, okay, oh, YouTube gets them. Or we talked with Kim Iverson. The Hills Rising, I think it was Rising, they got suspended from YouTube because they aired a clip of Donald Trump speaking on an interview, and Trump said something that YouTube,
Interesting.
that was it. And
That's
because
wild.
YouTube has a very specific rule for how you can address certain conversations. That is to say, if, or I should say, when we get Donald Trump on the show, we will not be taken down. Maybe because YouTube's rule enforcement is arbitrary. But I know YouTube's rules well enough to where I think we could allow Donald Trump his space to make his points, and we could say what needs to be said to make sure it doesn't get booted off the internet.
That would be cool if you had Trump on the show.
I mean, we've talked with some of his people. It's just kind of like, I don't know. You know, if Trump came on the show, it'd be like, we'd have to go to Florida.
Well, it'd be
and set
bigly.
up.
Yeah, very bigly.
Yeah.
I would definitely do it. It would be fantastic. And,
Big
you know,
biggest.
we'll reach out to some of the people. We've had a bunch of people. We've had Bannon and Peter Navarro
Yeah.
and stuff. So I
I
think
really
it'd be-
like Peter Navarro, man. That guy's
he's a cool
awesome.
dude. Yeah. I think it would be great to sit down with Trump for a couple hours. But what we were told is like, he'd probably do a half an hour, maybe. You got to come down. And I was like, okay, well, we'll figure it out when we figure it out. So maybe we'll reach out and see if we can, sit down with Donald Trump and talk to him. I don't think it would get taken down from the internet, though. I think we'd be able to get that.
I take your point about dancing around certain topics and not saying certain phrases or certain words in order to stay on. But the fact that social media, that these corporate kind of faceless corporations are preventing people from talking, I think is despicable. And when he was cancelled from Twitter, I mean, I just think that was a bit of a game changer when everyone realized that
Oh, yeah.
actually these globalists, these sort of technocrats, they have way too much power on what we can hear.
Well,
Yeah,
so here's what we
that's
try to
true.
do. I think, we can get like 99% of everything we want to say on the show because we mostly talk about current events. So we're talking about like up-to-date news. That's one of the reasons we don't get hit a lot. When people have candid conversations on a wide range of topics that span several years is where YouTube gets you. We pull up news articles from this week. It's like hard for them to enforce what's on Newsweek or the New York Times or CNN. But for the greater conversations that we think, let's not get banned, we go to timcast.com, member segments. If you become a member there and support us, then it allows us to have this more, open. Granted, I'll tell you this, we've had the corporations, like big, powerful players, really mad at us over our members only segments. So I hope people realize that.
Probably like the one we're about to have.
Oh, it's going to get, I imagine this one's going to trigger a bunch of, corporate entities. But people need to understand that too, because when we say like, we're going to do things at timcast.com where we mostly get to say whatever we want to say on this show because we're talking about current events. If there's something where we think it's going to cross that line where YouTube would take advantage of it to ban us, they still know we're doing it. And these big corporate entities still know we're doing it. They're trying to figure out how to punish us for our own website. And that's a challenge we're working towards. I don't want to say too much because we're signing on with some new companies that are really going to solidify and fortify our ability to have conversations on whatever we want. But look, man, it ain't easy. I tell people, do you want to sacrifice 99 conversations for that one? I certainly understand not wanting to give up that one conversation. And if there was something so insanely important you'd risk getting banned for it, I say we have to have it. If there's something that's not, apocalyptic and, whatever, we'll do a members only speakeasy kind of show where we'll go in the back room and get away from the prying eyes of the establishment. But, there are certain things that I'm like, let's go for it. Like the Epstein stuff. Luke was like, how do we deal with this? Because we're talking about suicide. We're talking about, I'm like, no, we're going like, no way, dude. Something like that has to be, we'll talk about Epstein all day, all week. So anyway, my friends, go to timcast.com, become a member. We're going to have that members only segment coming up. It'll be published around 11 or so p.m. You can follow the show at Timcast IRL. You can follow me at Timcast. Kelly, do you want to shout anything out? You have social media or anything?
I do. If you want to purchase and support what we do, there's a US store, which is adulthumanfemale.us. If you're in the UK or Europe or you don't mind high postage costs, it's adulthumanfemale.store. And you can also support what we do at standingforwomen.com. Oh, and Kellie-Jay Keen on YouTube.
Right on. Libby, you want to shout anything out?
Sure. Libby Emmons. I'm at Libby Emmons on Twitter. I'm at the Post Millennial every day. And if you want to help us out, we get targeted by Antifa all the time. If you want to help us out, thepostmillennial.com/contribute. And you can subscribe to our newsletters and to our site. And yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Oh, also, Kellie-Jay gave me this pin.
What is it?
And it says mother is a female parent.
Oh, that's nice.
Is that the actual definition of the word?
Very happy about it.
It's abbreviated to get on a pen.
Yeah.
To be fair.
I mean, it is,
So that's what we're going to talk about in the member
shorter
segment.
than Twitter, but still.
We're going to talk about definitions, dictionary definitions.
Good. My
Oh,
favorite
God,
topic.
Scary.
Liturgy. Hey, I'm Ian Crossan. Follow me, IanCrossan.net. I'll see you guys later.
Yeah, I'm very excited for this conversation. We'll be discussing the definition of woman, which is an adult human female. I'm told. I'm stoked. I get to wear my shirt tonight. You guys may follow me on Twitter and minds.com @SourPatchLids.
We will see you all at timcast.com. Thanks for hanging out.